at least here. Recording is in progress. Thank you very much, Michaela. Yes, so it is 7:02 here in the Washington, D.C. area, and I want to thank you all for joining us here today. My name is Gabriella Richardson-Kem. I work at the GEF Secretariat at the Policy and Partnership and Operations Unit. And I've been here for a couple of years, so many of you I probably have met or seen at some point before. I've worked at the Secretariat on issues on gender and safeguards, environmental and social safeguards, more recently on stakeholder engagement, also working with the GEF Small Grants Program, and among other things. So I am very honored and pleased to be here today, and thank you all for joining, whatever time you have on your end. So I'm going to ask, before I move forward, I should just say, and I should say it slowly, which I will remind everyone to do all through the day, is that we do have the interpreters in French and in English. So if you go click down on your screen, you should see something that looks like a world or something like that, and it says interpretation. If you click on that, you can select your language, your preferred language. If you have any problems, just let us know in the chat, and Michaela and others will help you out with that. Michaela, could you do me a favor and put on the PowerPoint so I can provide a little bit of a background on what we are doing here today, who is here, and what we are planning to do today. So this CSO consultation is actually become a very long tradition within the GEF partnership. The GEF, and also I should maybe not use acronyms, so I should say the Global Environmental Facility have been doing these consultations now for a couple of years back. These consultations have been planned and organized in collaboration with the GEF Secretariat, ourselves, the GEF CSO network, which you will hear a lot from later, also the GEF Indigenous Peoples Advisory Group, as well as the GEF Small Grants Program. And we have also been very happy to have engaged youth and representatives and groups as we have set up this very hopefully interesting agenda for you all today. And the topic today is youth advocacy and solutions. And this topic was consulted among our network and then decided by the council to be the choice of the subject for this meeting. And we also have many council members joining us here today. So with that, you can move me over to my next slide so I can get a little bit of saying what we're trying to do to here. I put this little watch, listen and learn slide up there, or picture up there, because I think this is what we are here to do today. We are supposed to watch and look at each other. We're supposed to listen, and we're supposed to learn from each other. And that's why we're here today. And that goes from both from the secretariats to the CSO network, from the council. We really want this to be a good conversation and to really take this moment to learn from youth and youth-led civil society organizations. So we have it, as you can, and I hope you all have seen the agenda, and it's also now posted on our website. So basically we have, I see it at least as three major objectives and components. We will listen to, and we have many great youth activists and leaders that will join us in the panels today. We will listen to their efforts and to influence and advocate and deliver on local, national, and global environmental goals and commitments. We will also have a moment to engage in a dialogue with these youth leaders. And one of the things that we really want to leave this meeting with is some good ideas, and maybe not recommendations per se, but good ideas on what we can do better to engage and support youth and youth-led civil society organizations moving forward. As many of you know, we are just in a very exciting time in our organization. We are just part of, we are almost at the last stretch of our replenishment meeting, and we are moving into a new and ambitious GEF 8 agenda and strategy. So you can move to the next one and see if I have no more cool pictures on this one. But so we will have 3 sections and just to outline them for you. So we will have some opening remarks by our CSO network, our own GEF CEO, a council member, and we will also have a keynote speaker who I hope now has joined us. We will then have 2 different dialogues moderated by first Maria Leichner and then Isha Sharma. And we're going to focus those 2. One of them is going to focus on youth innovators, on innovations, and the other is going to be talking more with people that are really youth leaders and advocates around the world. Then we will have some reflections from our staff, our scientific and technical advisory panel, as well as council member and our own Françoise Klotz. So let's see if I have one more slide. Do I have one more slide? Yes, I do. I already said all of this. So this is the first segment of the agenda, and where we will have the opening remarks, as I said, by the CSO network, the GEF CEO, and the GEF council member. And then we will have a keynote speech. Next one. And then we will have, as I said, the second segment of the agenda where we will have a dialogue and discussions. And here we are hoping that you can engage with us through the chat, and also when we have the Q&A session that you will raise your voice, and but don't raise your voice. Put a note in the chat to say that you want to raise your voice, and then we'll figure out to get you to ask your questions or provide your comments. So I think, no, I have the last one, and then I should next one. Yes, so that is then the third segment, where what I was saying about the wrap up. We are hoping to keep this. I will try to keep us on time, and if I manage with that, we should be closing in about. We should be closing our time by 10:30. We still have the interpreters for a little bit longer, so if we go longer, we go longer. And if we don't go all the way there, we can end whenever we are done. But just to let you know about the timelines. Next one. Now I will hand over to my esteemed colleague, Susan. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Oh, you're there, and your camera is on. Good morning, Susan.
Morning,
handing
Gabriela.
over to Susan. Thank you. I'm handing over to you to tell everyone a little bit of the rules of engagement and how we are going to manage this event. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. Thank you, Gabriela. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody from wherever you are logged in. Welcome. I'll add my words of welcome to Gabriela's. My name is Susan Waithaka. I work at the GEF Secretariat as a Country Relations Officer, as well as working on things, CSOs, gender, amongst others. Welcome once again to this GEF CSO consultation. And as you already know, the meeting is being recorded. We would ask that you please mute yourself so that we can minimize any outside noise. You are also aware, and I will say it again now, the meeting is being, that we have interpretation in French and English. And all you need to do is go to the bottom of your screen, the icon that says interpretation. It has a world like looking icon, and it has the 3 options that you can pick, either English, French, or Spanish. So choose the one that you are using. We are hoping to make this as interactive as possible. We have our panelists and we have our attendees. And so we ask that you use the chat function as much as possible. Again, it's at the bottom of the screen. Many of you have already checked in there and are sending greetings. So use the chat function for any comments or questions. We will be monitoring the chat. And if you also want to speak, although because of time, we may not have too much room for people to speak, but if you do have a need to speak, please put your name in the chat box as well, and we will manage that based on how time goes. I think, and you may put your questions in the chat in French or Spanish and English, and our team will be monitoring that. Gabriela, I think that's it. Not sure if I have left anything out.
I think that's good. And Michaela, you can turn off the PowerPoint. Thank you. And I do think we had, and now I can't see the number, I think we had over 250 or more registered for this event. So we are quite many here today, and it was interesting. I looked at the list yesterday, and it's really covering the whole of the world and all different kinds of ages and professions. So I am very, very grateful for being here today with all of you. And you are going to be lucky. I will not speak very much during this event at all. My only role here is to push the process forward. So you will not hear much from me. But before I go, there was one more thing I was going to say. Yes, I was going to remind everyone again, and myself in particular, to speak slowly. It is not an easy job to be an interpreter, so we have to make sure that we make it easy for them, and the interpreters will let us know if we need to slow down, which is probably going to be said to me at one point. So with that, I am really excited to move over to the next or the first segment of this consultation. And it's my pleasure to invite Sano, who is the chair of the GEF CSO network. The GEF CSO network has been around for many years. I think it dates back almost to 2095 or something like that. And it is a fabulous coalition of civil society organizations around the world that help support and push the GEF forward on many issues. And we do consult with them on many issues and with our policies and the way that we operate. And I'm very happy to give the floor to Sano, who most certainly will tell you a little bit more about the CSO network and their ambition and recommendations on how we can better engage youth moving forward, and also maybe something about what the CSO network, what opportunities there are for the CSO network. No, for youth in the CSO network, sorry. So welcome, Sano and Michaela. I think there is a PowerPoint presentation, and I think this is the last PowerPoint presentation of this whole consultation.
First and last.
Thank you. I will now mute myself.
Hi, thank you, everybody. And on behalf of the GEF CSO network, I would like to invite everyone on board. First of all, I want to thank the GEF Secretariat for organizing such excellent event, and CEO and other senior officials participated, supported to make this event happen. I also want to thank the youth leaders from this excellent, this beautiful globe. And we believe youth can move the world. And the GEF has identified to bring the youth leaders to move the world, to make the world greener. So thanks for this. This is very exciting, and this is very special event. I would also like to thank our CSO colleagues as representatives from the regional focal points, country focal points, other colleagues, small grant programs, staff, and all the GEF family. Thank you very much. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and thanks from Cambodia. First of all, this is a great opportunity that we are inclusive system following. We are following that inclusiveness because GEF is always working with everyone in the world. So now we are putting the youth in front of us to learn, to see, and to practice together. Thank you. Next slide, please. And actually, this total event is not for presentation. So this is the first and last PowerPoint presentation, because what we are telling, at least you can see what is GEF CSO network, how we can help together, how we can work together. This network was established in 1995 to facilitate the contribution from the civil society groups to the GEF governance system. We have more than 600 members from 16 regions. We have 3 indigenous peoples representatives from this one. That means we have total 19 regional status holder representatives in this network work as the key decision makers. We used to participate in the civil society consultations supported by GEF. At the global level, that we call council meeting. This is a part of the council meeting, and also from Monday there will be the original council meeting where we will have the opportunity to speak out, to add value, to complement. So one of the key essence of this GEF CSO network is that we work to complement, to identify what is the opportunity to update. We don't go for competition, we don't go for overlapping, we complement and we add value. So as a part of this, we are also working on different areas in the part of monitoring, capacity building, regional and national level, and other engagement of the civil societies to make the GEF visible globally. Next slide, please. We have, as a part of the governance, we have coordination committee that I told that we have 16 regional focal points and 3 indigenous peoples groups representatives. We call them as the key role players in governance mechanism. And we have led by the chair and vice chair. So this is small structure of this global network. Next slide, please. Memberships, this is very important thing. It is open to all civil society organizations that works connecting to the contribute to the GEF focal areas. Climate change, biodiversity, international waters, soil degradation, waste and chemicals, all these areas, anyway, directly, indirectly, any network, any civil society group contribute, they can be our partner. And we welcome every civil society organizations, they are not for profit, to join us. And also, particularly, we want to welcome the youth groups. If they are interested to be the member, we welcome them to be the member. And there are many opportunities in the GEF. First, the biggest opportunity is learning a lot. What is happening in the world, how the GEF is addressing all those challenges, what is the achievements, what are the challenges. Learning is very important because the more information we have, the richer we are. So from these perspectives, we have this great opportunity to learn, to engage in the GEF mechanism. We have this, as for example, today, this is a CSO consultation with the CEO, council members, and others. And then we will have assembly where we can participate, attend, contribute. We have ECWs, expanded constituency workshops, where we can sit together with the country's government representatives, and then we can work together, and then we can contribute. So this is, the GEF has given us a very outstanding mechanism to contribute in this process. Next slide, please. Okay, so what I have been talking about, this is what we had for a long time. Now, recently, the coordination committee decided to make more vibrant and more effective this network, and to make the GEF visible, make the GEF CSO network more visible at the country level, at the regional and the global level. As a part of that, what we are going to do is we have decided to establish the global steering committee with the continental representation. So that means every continent, there will be one member representing to this global steering committee. And then they will be supporting in the mainly the governance area of this network. And then we will have national focal points and technical focal points. That means 5 focal area, we will have 5 focal points. So that means in each country, there will be at least 6 active GEF CSO networks representative. And the regional focal points, they will establish and maintain WhatsApp group, Telegram group, because what is happening around the world today, that we need to use these technologies to be connected. So WhatsApp, Telegram, and there are different other communication tools and techniques are available. So we will use it. And we have already very successful example like South Asia, West Asia, Southern America, and Southeast Asia. We have and others colleagues, we are mobilizing our members. Before they used to be communicated through email. Now we have email. We also have Telegram group, WhatsApp group. So we will be connecting them together. So every moment we are connected. And then in the country focal points, to establish and maintain WhatsApp group, as I told you. So these are the new key points are coming up. Thank you. Next slide, please. So as we told that we will have very short presentation, but more dialogue. So we have few recommendations. The objective of the recommendations is to enhance the visibility of the GEF globally, because the GEF since 1992, it has been doing huge contribution in the field of environment, global climate. So based on that, there are more opportunities remaining that we need to take some additional initiative that help the GEF to be visible, what it is doing, what are the excellence it has, what are the great things it can contribute, what are the challenges they need to learn. So altogether, we want to add value here. So first of all, we want to recommend that the GEF 8, many of you, I know the GEF architecture, the people are engaged there, they know what is GEF 8, but I'm talking about the youth and the others. So GEF 8, you know, the GEF, it comes for every 4 years. So now currently GEF 7 is ongoing and GEF 8 will be coming. And GEF 8, it will be for again another 4 years. And it is under planning for the next 4 years strategic approach. So one of the recommendations for this GEF 8 is to include multi-stakeholder dialogue platforms. The concept we have submitted, we have been talking about for the in the GEF architecture, GEF 8 architecture. Because GEF 8 architecture is it is talking about more inclusiveness, more integrated approach, so that if we want to make it more visible, then we need this multi-stakeholder dialogue platforms at the country level, where government will be leading, GEF agencies will be working, CSO network will be facilitating, and every year there should be at least one dialogue with all stakeholders where youth representatives will be participating, and then this dialogue mainly it will focus on what are the projects are implemented by the GEF, government or civil societies, small grant programs, others, they will present, they will identify what are the progress they have, what are the challenges they have, how to make it more visible, how to make it more effective, and how to make it more result oriented. And then we can also have the qualitative and quantitative scorecard to see the progress. And this progress can be made in online, so that the GEF can see, example, what is the progress in Cambodia? They can see what is the progress in Southeast Asia. Easily they can see what is the progress in total Asia. Easily they can see, and what is the progress global level they can see. And when we have this on, then we can also quantify the economic benefit, and it must come based on the baseline age and sex disaggregated, where vulnerability, capacity, ecosystem, economic status, all these things will be the foundation to demonstrate the progress. So the recommendation number 2 is and the GEF should fund the global and regional projects led by the GEF CSO network, GCN, GEF CSO network. The project should be on climate advocacy, literacy, civic capacity building, and related initiatives, where youth should be one of the key role target groups. Because when we talk about the climate literacy, the primary, secondary, high school, or tertiary, everywhere, there is the presence of the youth. So they will be the key beneficiaries. And today, the theme of this consultation, and then we as I told, that youth can move the world. It is true, youth can move the world when we give them the opportunity, give them to play the role. And if we really want to give them to play the role, to contribute meaningfully, significantly, then I am sure we need to keep the door open for them. So then, I mean, we need to make a process for them. If we don't make a process, we just keep here as an event today, and then later it ends, then youth cannot move the world. The world will go where it is going. So we recommend that they should be the part of the process, at least from the country level, global level, regional level, they are already. And then third is provide core funding to the network for its smooth operations at country, regional, and global level. Because without resources, nothing can happen. Even today we are sitting, if no electricity, we will be disconnected. Similarly, if no resources, no progress can be made. Thank you. Next slide, please. And this is the end of my presentation. Any question and answer, we will be happy to participate. And thanks for your kind attention and taking this opportunity. I would like to invite our CEO, Carlos Manuel, for his opening remarks. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Sano, and good morning from and greetings from Costa Rica to everybody joining us in the GEF CSO consultation on the youth-led advocacy and solutions. I'm really happy to be here today, and it is not just any other event that we are organizing and participating here. It is the first event in the GEF Council, the 61st Council that begins formally today and ends in a week. And I feel extremely happy and honored that the 61st GEF Council meeting begins with a CSO consultation process with the youth. And this is the 61st, but also in this council meeting, we will be celebrating the 30th anniversary of the GEF. We've been working for 30 years. And as we look back in time, the GEF has been extremely supportive in the overall environmental agenda, which have helped countries in many, many different ways. If you see what we have done in terms of protected areas, we have been the #1 by far supplier of financial resources, technical support for the creation of protected areas to 150 nations in the planet. If you add all of the protected areas of the planet that were done through the GEF, that would be the 5th largest nation in the planet. All protected areas created through the GEF are larger than Brazil. And if we see what we have done with the CSO, the civil society, non-state actors in these 30 years, we have worked in 133 countries, mobilizing mobilizing around $600 million. But that, nevertheless, to the youth, the GEF is something old because it's 30 years old. It's something that is driven by the government's needs and priorities. It's probably the GEF is seen also by the youth as something very rigid, very far up there, somewhere unreachable. It's not fresh. It's not friendly to the needs of the youth. And as we look into the future, the next 30 years, GEF needs to be a close collaborator, not just with the youth and the youth movement, but overall with all the civil society as non-state actors become more and more relevant based on the understanding that the responsibilities to move from this unsustainable consumption and production pattern is not an exclusive responsibility of governments. We need private sector and civil society working hand in hand. So help us really understand how the GEF can be something close to the youth priorities and need. Help us and guide us on how we can be of support to many of you that are working in the front lines of conservation. I'm 61 years old. I got a great beard, but I used to be very young and very active and very rebel. I grew up in a country where Costa Rica, where decision makers didn't care much about nature conservation. When I was a young kid, deforestation in Costa Rica was the highest per capita in the planet. And I worked with a couple of friends. I remember when I was finishing high school and you share your vision for your future, what you want to do. Well, basically 99.9% of my classmates, they wanted to be, very wealthy cattle ranchers, coffee farmers, very rich business people. And I was there not knowing what to do with my life. And I said, I wanted to protect the forests of Costa Rica, and everybody kind of laughed at me. I want to see where my friends are now today when they see me as the CEO of the GEF. Nobody thought that there was any possibility to do a professional career out of nature conservation. And I follow my gut feelings, my instincts. And yes, deforestation was so high in Costa Rica, so embedded in the decision-making processes, in the development policies, that I never thought that today, 30 years later, Costa Rica not only stopped deforestation, but doubled the size of the forest, and forest-related tourism has become the #1 source of rural jobs in my country. That happened in 30 years, in a generation. I thought as a kid that my work was creating a lot of small protected areas, because outside protected areas we will never see anything green at all. And I work a lot also fighting the energy sector in my country, big dams. And we were 3 lonely guys fighting the biggest corporation in Central America, a public utility in Costa Rica, building large dams, flooding beautiful rainforests, and changing the lives of many people who live out of a subsistent but sustainable activities in the forest. These are my roots. And I've been able to see changes, and the changes that I saw happening as I grew up as an adult was because there were people, adults, that look at me and some of my generation and gave us a hand in many different manners, and it helped us really begin changing the course of what happened in my country. So when I traveled to Latin America, Southeast Asia, and the African countries, I identify a lot with the youth and the younger generation. Of course, the situation is totally different to what I had when I was young. Today, I totally agree with the younger generation that my generation, which doesn't represent me at all, my generation really compromised your future. And I got 4 kids, and you cannot imagine the kind of conversation that we have every single night in our dinner table, instead of around why the adults are not taking decisions where the evidence is so clear. Why you and your generation, that this is what my kids ask, why don't you really take bold and sound decisions based on what we all know? And they don't understand it. Of course, they don't need to understand it. I try to do my best to understand the complexities of the multilateralism, the complexities around decision making, the complexities around being pressured by economic sectors when you are in office, but that is not enough. And I think that we need to address this issue first and foremost from a values and principles perspective, and from there all the way to the very concrete efforts that we need to do in terms of achieving progress. So I'm very excited to be here and to put a lot of attention into these young leaders. You are now young leaders, but that is going to be for a while. Eventually, you're not going to be a young leader. We want you to be a major global leader, wherever you are. So set your goals and ambitions very high. We need you all, leading as leaders on all different sectors. I hope many of you see the political career as a good option, particularly nowadays that I'm really concerned by the fact that at the global level, politics are really polarized. We see a lot of political, economic confrontation in moments that we need collaboration, global collaboration. There is no option rather than working around global collaboration. And unfortunately, we see those global conflicts around politics and economics, but also extreme ideologies, particularly nationalism. Nationalism is a big challenge in moments that we want global collaboration. The GEF, together with UNDP, has been working with the Small Grant Program for decades. One of the most successful programs in the history of sustainability. And we want to get to the next level. We're honored to have Yoko Watanabe with us today, representing the Small Grant Program and the faces of many people around the world, particularly young people, women, farmers, indigenous people. We look into the Small Grant Program as a way to really complement the top-down investment and engagement that the GEF does with strengthening our social base. As Sano was saying, we are in the middle of the GEF replenishment, where we will be working for the next 4 years. This is the moment to really think big time, very ambitious on how the Small Grant Program should work. My job is to do political negotiations to bring more funding to the Small Grant Program, but the job of all of us is to really put a very compelling programming proposal to our donors. We're looking for that, and this consultation will give us a lot of very clear ideas and insights on the many different things that we want to do within that program, and that program should definitely influence all the different financial windows that we have at the GEF. I hope that the Small Grant Program can continue growing and evolving and can respond to the needs of very specific important groups of stakeholders in civil society. Youth is one, woman is another, indigenous communities, even working directly with park rangers, and bringing the element of gender in the park rangers work. That's a very important element. Park rangers. I'm a frustrated park ranger. I have worked with the Park Service in Costa Rica. I know what they do. I know their needs, and I know how strategic the work they do. And probably many of the youth movement are supporting many different efforts in the, stewarding and protecting our system of protected areas. So looking into more specific dedicated windows may be an option. And here we will be putting a lot of attention on the different ideas. Building capacity, knowledge management are two key areas where we understand that there's a lot that we can do. But well, today it is a first formal step in the right direction. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We got a super great lineup of speakers and panelists today. And I look forward for a very, very successful event today. With this, I conclude my, my welcoming remarks. And let me introduce my dear friend, David Olarte from Colombia. David is advisor to the Minister of Environment of Colombia. David, the floor is yours. Muy buenos días.
Thank you very much, Carlos Manuel. I'm going to arrange my speaking in Spanish. Bueno, muchísimas gracias de nuevo a todos. Un saludo muy especial a nuestro colega, aliado y amigo Carlos Manuel, a todo el equipo del GEF que está presente, pero también un saludo muy especial a todos los jóvenes que nos acompañan el día de hoy, a los líderes. Yo quedé también muy impactado, al igual que ustedes, con las palabras que nos acaba de dar Carlos Manuel. Sin lugar a dudas, es un referente para muchos de nosotros y estamos seguros que al poder también seguir y aplicar esos pasos y poder también innovar y aprovechar los nuevos conocimientos, la información y los datos que tenemos, podemos también con todo nuestro apoyo apuntarle a un liderazgo que coadyuve a tener una recuperación de cara a nuestro planeta. No hay un planeta B y todos lo sabemos, para nadie es un secreto, pues las diferentes cifras y datos, evaluaciones y la crisis planetaria en la que nos encontramos, la pérdida de biodiversidad, el cambio climático, la afectación a la salud pública, la afectación a nuestros suelos, a nuestros océanos. Son innumerables los diversos daños por los que está pasando el planeta, pero también podemos ser muy ambiciosos en poder salir adelante y, así como lo mencionó también Carlos Manuel, avanzar en una recuperación, avanzar en un trabajo coordinado, en un trabajo que no tenga fronteras, en un trabajo de la mano para salir adelante y poder cumplir, más allá de cumplir nuestras metas internacionales, poder pensar en el futuro del planeta y dejar un legado en el cual las futuras generaciones puedan también aprovechar de una manera sostenible y gozar de un planeta saludable. Actualmente vivimos la mayor de la crisis planetaria y los informes, por ejemplo, de la Plataforma Intergubernamental de Biodiversidad y Servicios Ecosistémicos ha mostrado esa gran degradación de la biodiversidad. Las contribuciones fundamentales al bienestar humano también se ha acelerado en los últimos 50 años a un ritmo sin precedente en la historia. En este sentido, evidenciamos la necesidad de ahondar en las relaciones estrechas entre el ser humano, su modo de vida y su entorno. Y es muy importante este escenario y estos espacios también con diferentes líderes que también inclusive vimos y realizamos y apoyamos durante la COP de cambio climático de hace no menos de un mes. En este escenario es importante también tener presente que parte importante de los 1.200 millones de jóvenes entre 15 y 24 años representan cerca del 16% de la población mundial. Y además que esos jóvenes tienen un papel fundamental con miras a hacer realidad ese cambio transformacional. Yo solamente veo, por ejemplo, y un caso muy particular mío, mi sobrino tiene 8 años y ya él, digamos, cómo conoce de los diversos temas y aplica términos, por ejemplo, en su casa de reciclaje, de ahorro de agua, del ahorro de las luces, de apagar los bombillos. Y yo creo que eso es algo muy importante en resaltar. Y es algo que en algunas generaciones, por ejemplo, eso aún no es tan consciente. Y por eso es que los jóvenes tienen un papel fundamental con miras a hacer realidad ese cambio transformacional. En los diferentes escenarios de la comunidad internacional se están negociando esos objetivos y esas metas globales para la lucha contra el cambio climático, para la lucha contra la pérdida de biodiversidad, para la protección de nuestras áreas protegidas, para el uso sostenible también de nuestra biodiversidad, la protección de nuestros océanos y de otros ecosistemas estratégicos. Con el fin de aportar a estos procesos, Colombia hospedó la Precop de diversidad hace unos meses. Y en esta Precop avanzamos en la definición de compromisos ambiciosos y de alianzas estratégicas para emprender esas transiciones socioecológicas hacia la sostenibilidad y donde el papel de los jóvenes permite comprender que el estado actual del medio ambiente pone en juego su presente y su futuro. Un ejemplo que quisiera también resaltar es ese proceso de negociación que hemos venido liderando también desde Colombia, que siendo de carácter inclusivo y participativo, han revolucionado la forma de negociar este tipo de instrumentos, dado que se ha logrado una mayor inclusión de la sociedad civil y de las organizaciones de mujeres y jóvenes en la construcción de estos procesos. La crisis de la pandemia ocasionada por el COVID-19 ha llevado a que los jóvenes, los niños y las niñas puedan cambiar sus formas de vida, de aprendizaje y en general de aproximación hacia la sociedad y a la vida pública muy distintas a otras épocas, con retos inmensos a los cuales se han sabido adaptar y nos han demostrado que son los primeros en entender que se requiere de una recuperación verde y equitativa post-COVID-19, pero con miras a que esto no solamente se quede acá cuando podamos salir de esta pandemia, sino que esto se siga replicando y siga generando también capacidades en cada una de las regiones y en los rincones de este planeta. En este marco y destacando también el consejo que se va a venir del GEF, se ha reconocido la participación de la sociedad civil que se debe promover también en diferentes espacios y particularmente en estas consultas. Es por eso también que se ha decidido deliberar sobre la promoción y las soluciones dirigidas por los jóvenes a la crisis ambiental del planeta, dado el reconocimiento importante que desempeñan en esa promoción y en ese cumplimiento de la sostenibilidad ambiental. Precisamente el objetivo de esta consulta es iniciar un diálogo constructivo entre la Secretaría del Fondo Mundial para el Medio Ambiente, nosotros, los miembros del Consejo, los jóvenes y las organizaciones de la sociedad civil dirigidas también por las personas que están aquí presentes. Teniendo en cuenta y en consideración que hay jóvenes líderes locales y defensores también de la juventud indígena a nivel nacional y local que están decididos en movilizar y en encabezar cambios positivos en sus propias comunidades y países, y que junto a través de diferentes redes como las redes de jóvenes por la sostenibilidad ambiental de América Latina y el Caribe, que es reconocida por la UNESCO, como un modelo de educación en la práctica que generan esfuerzos juveniles que van desde iniciativas locales hasta diferentes también campañas internacionales. Yo acá quisiera también resaltar los avances que tenemos también en nuestro país, en Colombia. Acá contamos con una política de juventud que tiene como objetivo fortalecer ese desarrollo integral de la población joven, urbana y rural y la construcción de los proyectos de vida para contribuir a su vinculación como agentes de desarrollo político, económico, social y cultural. Y también esa promoción de esa política se hace con la participación de los diferentes jóvenes y líderes. En mi caso, bueno, yo tan solo tengo 32 años, ya no estoy en ese rango de jóvenes, pero sí me siento honrado de poder representar a mi país como punto focal ante este fondo desde los últimos 3 años y medio, pero aún así también poder llevar en los diferentes escenarios internacionales esa política de ambiente y desarrollo sostenible que estamos haciendo con la participación claramente de nuestros líderes también al interior del Ministerio de Ambiente, pero también con el apoyo de otros colegas de trabajo. Y acá quisiera destacar la reciente también participación que hemos tenido en la conferencia de cambio climático, donde gran parte del equipo negociador de Colombia no superó, perdón, los 35 años. Hemos también tenido mesas de diálogo a nivel nacional de cara al pacto de Colombia con las juventudes para poder orientar las acciones juveniles en desarrollar dentro de nuestra Escuela Nacional de Formación Ambiental, que se llama SABIA, diferentes acciones dirigidas a los jóvenes, pero que además son construidas por los jóvenes. Esto que es muy importante, es un proceso de inclusión y de construcción que hemos venido haciendo con la participación de diferentes actores en nuestro país. Estas iniciativas deben ser aprobadas también por los diferentes recursos y llevadas también a otros niveles que permita una incidencia y un cambio transformador desde la juventud. Yo con esto quisiera de nuevo agradecer por esta importante invitación también que nos han hecho y también por la invitación que me han hecho en acompañarlos durante esta apertura y durante este proceso y estas consultas. Y ya con eso simplemente quisiera también darle la bienvenida a este grupo maravilloso de jóvenes que son el presente con derecho a construir también su propia realidad. Un saludo muy especial a Elizabeth de Kenia, a Alba de Guatemala, a Rachid de Marruecos, a Barsha de Nepal, a Desmond y Ezequiel de Ghana, a Maribel de México, a Kiefer de Guyana, a Derrick de Uganda y a Johnny de Polonia. Muchísimas gracias a todos y bueno, acá estaremos también acompañándolos durante estas consultas. Un saludo muy especial y les mando también un abrazo muy, muy fuerte y caluroso desde Colombia. Muchísimas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias a vos, David, por tu mensaje, por tu compromiso. Sin duda, las experiencias colombianas son enriquecedoras para todos en este proceso. So thank you, David, for your remarks and your message. With this, now I'm really pleased to introduce Elizabeth Watuti from the Green Generation Initiative from Kenya. We're pleased and delighted to have her. Elizabeth, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. My name is Elizabeth Watuti, and I am an environmentalist and a climate activist from Kenya. And I'm also the founder of Green Generation Initiative that nurtures young people to love nature and to be environmentally conscious. And I also head campaigns at the Wangari Maathai Foundation. And I would wish to begin my remarks on an inspirational tone to share about my work as an environmentalist and how I got into this space. I was personally born and brought up in the woods and in the most forested region in Kenya. And this means that I do have beautiful memories of spending time among trees and bushes, chasing butterflies, and even staying close to clean streams. And it is that love that got me to where I am today, fighting for the survival of the forests and the wildlife that I grew up with. During the time when the late Professor Wangari Maathai was my member of parliament in our home region, that's in Nyeri County in Kenya, I also remember planting my first tree when I was 7. And at this moment, I felt part of nature, and I knew that I loved nature enough to protect her and give back. But along the way, I have also witnessed ecological grief, seeing the natural world that my friends and I knew as children changing before our eyes. My forest landscape, whole networks of trees I played, ran, and dreamt among as a child are being destroyed, burned, and cut down faster than you can even snap your fingers. And the waters I drank from when I was little are drying up. They're not flowing at the same speed anymore, and the levels have gone down. The harvests are also failing. The granaries where we used to have lots of food stored in are running empty, and there's not enough to eat, let alone store and sell. And right now, drought has been declared a national disaster in Kenya, and over 2.1 million people are facing starvation. So as a young person, I am crying for nature's destruction. I am crying for the hungry children. And I am crying because I love them and because I love my forest landscape and I love nature as well. But I am not standing back and feeling hopeless. Just like the hummingbird, as Professor Wangari Maathai always said, I am doing the best I can. And I know that our lives depend on nature. So I'm recognizing her rights and fighting for her life so that we can all feel the joy of her abundance once again. So I am currently working with others to protect those places where nature touches us close to home. Back in 2016, I founded the Green Generation Initiative to get more young people and especially children to love nature and to be environmentally conscious. And this is because I did realize the power of having time to spend with nature and developing a love for nature, and in the process connecting to nature, and how that continues to fuel that natural call to action to step up and solve the challenges that are surrounding us. Because I think we do have a great problem around the world where a bigger population is definitely not concerned about how their actions are impacting the next generations. And so having a generation of young people who are conscious of the environment, that means that that's a generation of people who will be mindful about how they will leave the planet for the next generation. And some of the programs we have been doing at the initiative all began with the symbol of a tree. Like I mentioned, the tree was the first thing that made me connect to nature. And so we started a campaign that I dubbed Adopt a Tree campaign to make sure that every child in every school in my country would get a chance to plant and adopt a tree each in their school compound. Because we also have to go beyond just planting trees, because that's not impactful. What is impactful is making sure that all the trees that are being planted get to grow up to maturity. And that is why this is really important, as it's not only helping increasing the forest cover in my country, which currently stands at about 7.4%, and this is actually below the 10% UN required minimum. But at the same time, it's getting the generation of young people to love nature and to connect with nature directly, because they are able to take care of these trees until maturity. And then along the way, we also identified so many challenges like food insecurity. That is one of the challenges impacting the African continent as a result of the climate crisis. And so we thought to ourselves, how can these trees provide something nutritious for these children? And that's when we began to now establish food forests, where we pick designated corners in the school compound, and there we plant mixed species of fruit trees. And this means that then the children will have something nutritious to feed, and at the same time, they will continue to nurture these trees and develop that same love and strong connection to the natural world. And so during that period, which I'm definitely also going to share with you some of the challenges that have been, and I do know that so many people, and especially young people, do share in the same challenges as well. But during that period, we've been able to impact about 20,000 school children who have gone through some of our programs that are experiential and also really practical, because it's not just about telling people about the climate crisis or telling people about the challenges of environmental degradation, but it's also about making them understand and learn that they can be a part of the solution. Right now, a lot of young people are facing eco-anxiety, just like I've mentioned. And in fact, a recent survey by Avast shows that 75% of young people are afraid of how the future will look like as a result of climate change. But then there has been this art that I have learned ever since I was a child, and just being able to witness all these natural world that I knew changing. But again, these things made me angry, but I learned the art of turning my anger into a hunger to want to do something about these challenges. And that's the same art that we are trying to bring in, that young people are actually part of the solution. They are the solution, and they need to feel part of the entire solution when it comes to addressing and tackling these challenges, because they are not sitting back and waiting to be given a seat at the table. They are already working on solutions every day in their communities to try and make things change. And also, we've been able to grow over 30,000 tree seedlings, which most of them are fruit trees. And this has been through this food forest. But then there are definitely a bigger vision for this initiative, to be able to reach more children, to be able to have a greater and wider impact in terms of the food forest and the trees that are being grown as well. But then there has been challenges, and I really do know that most of these challenges will resonate with most of the young people right now who are working on solutions. And I think one of the biggest challenges has been the challenge of accessing serious funding to scale up the initiative, because what happens with youth-led initiatives, it's mostly funding from like a small pot of funding to the next, which means that the initiatives are not really able to grow as per se or really to scale up, because once the funding is not there, then you cannot be able to do much more, and you have to wait until you have another channel of funding to continue with the initiative. And also, but even more importantly, the other challenge is that the political and economic system in Kenya and internationally seem to also be working against us. And I'll give a very good example is that on one side of the school gates, these children that I'm talking about are planting trees. But on the other side, they see developers cutting down primary forests. And beyond Kenya borders, countries are continuing to burn fossil fuels and degrade ecosystems, which is going to make Kenya's climate uninhabitable for these same children and the trees that they are planting. So it goes without saying that at the same time as young people are working on these actions, these are individual responsibility actions, we have to also make sure that their efforts are not being undermined by governments, by corporations, by big businesses that continue to either fuel deforestation, fuel nature degradation, or in any way continue to undermine the efforts that the young people are trying to make today. So one of the big questions I want us to ask ourselves today is, what does meaningful youth engagement look like? And I would just want to begin by thanking GEF for hosting this consultation with young people. It's really an important step forward, and also I'm grateful for the invitation as well to be speaking here. But then I know that governments and big organizations like GEF need to go much further if they're serious about engaging young people. And I will be sharing my experience, of course, moving forward. And just a few weeks ago, we came from COP26, and some of the young people, including myself, were given platforms to speak. And I personally had a platform to speak at the World Leaders Summit at the opening ceremony. But what's really important to note is that the interests and the voices of young people are still not present in the rooms where the real decisions are being made or are being made even at the COP. And that's really what is important, because it goes beyond the platforms. It goes beyond the opportunities. It's about how are the voices of young people feeding into the whole process. How do we know that we are being taken seriously if the things we propose and the things we say we want to see changing are not changing yet? And I think that's where things begin to change. And that's the only time we can say that we are making a difference in terms of meaningful and genuine youth engagement. And we have a very serious issue of intergenerational inequity. By definition, all of the levels of power are held by people above a certain age, and mostly 40 or 50 years old, because these are the people who have been in the workforce the longest. But the greatest consequences of their decisions will be borne by young people and those who are yet to be born. And there is nothing that is forcing these older people to take young people's interests into account. And right now, what we can see is young people want immediate action because these decisions are going to affect us longer. We are the ones that are going to have to live longer with these consequences. Young people are also infinitely powerful, but we need to change how the system interacts with us to ensure that there is meaningful youth engagement and co-creation. And I would like to give a small checklist of what meaningful and genuine youth engagement would look like. And one of them, young people want to be engaged and recognized as partners and not really as a side group that is brought in to tick the boxes and say we are engaging young people. And the second thing is that we have to invest in young people to bring their solutions to life. They are the ones that are doing most of the work that we talk about on the ground every day, despite the fact that this is the same population that is least responsible for the crisis. We have been born into this crisis, but every day we are still finding solutions to be able to support our communities and work on them. And the third one is there is need for organizations, governments, and everyone to be open to receiving constructive feedback and advice as well from young people. Because if the young people's voices will not matter in the decisions being made, then it's possibly not going to impact them in any way. Because young people are the ones who know and who feel deeply how it feels to be meaningfully engaged and what it feels as well to be tokenized. And the other thing is we have to also be knowledgeable of how to work with young people. And again, it goes back to working with young people. You will only know how to work with young people if you are actually working with young people and letting the young people fully express themselves on what it means to genuinely engage them. And then lastly, we have to embed inclusivity at the heart of every planning from the start to the end of it. And that's the whole of everything that we're trying to do. It has to be at the heart of it. Youth inclusion has to be at the heart of it. Serious youth engagement to me means seriously internalizing the fact that young people and future generations have got the biggest stake in decisions made today, and then centering their voices and their interests in decision making. Every time a decision is being made, leaders must ask themselves, will this decision be good for today's children and those yet to be born? And the children and the young people must be in the room to share their own view on that question. So the other question that we need to be asking ourselves now during this consultation forum is, what can the GEF do? I personally do not have direct experience of working with the GEF, so I cannot say so much on what the GEF does well or could do better in terms of youth engagement. But I deeply feel that this is a question that the GEF needs to ask itself as well in a deep way. And in this case, I have some questions, and I have prepared some questions for the GEF Council and Secretariat to consider. And I hope that every young person gathered here will also get an answer to these questions. And I'll begin with the GEF Council members. And my first question is, are the policy decisions you're making in your countries really in the interests of young people and children? And the second one is, are you centering their voices and interests whenever you make a decision? And the other set of questions is to the GEF Secretariat. Are you doing all you can to ensure that the decision makers you interact with and fund are taking decisions that are in the interests of young people and the children? And then how could you go further? And one very practical question, how will our voices and everything we say here today be heard by the GEF Council members? If they're not present at this consultation, which I know many of them aren't, how could you help us to speak with them directly? Do young people have a meaningful voice at GEF Council meetings? I think it will be very helpful for every young person here to get these answers. And I'll just conclude by saying that every day I am inspired by young people who are refusing to be victims and who are every day working tirelessly to deliver solutions and to advocate for a livable future. I see a whole generation of humans who are pouring energy and creativity into regenerating a dying world. So it is time for governments and organizations to get behind this generation and to take their interests seriously and then pour resources into scaling up the great work they're doing. Let's move beyond tokenism into serious collaboration. I think that is what is going to be beneficial in terms of meaningful and genuine youth engagement. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for your intervention. The food forest concept is really compelling, super interesting. The forest is not just the food market for many people, but also the drug and the hardware store. And yes, it is extremely frustrating to see so many different efforts in terms of tree planting and landscape restoration, while at the same time, development policies for private public sector continue to promote land use change, deforestation, particularly in primary forests, affecting not just biodiversity, but the livelihoods of many people. That is why the GEF looks into GEF 8, the need to invest in policy coherence. Our projects needs to help countries be more consistent within their overall development policies. Unfortunately, in every single country, development policies and the private and public investments are not aligned with their national climate and biodiversity, land degradation, and chemical commitments. And this is a big proof of policy incoherence. And just, of course, evidence tells us, Elizabeth, that decision makers, public and private sector, are not taking the best decisions in sake of the future of the next generation. That is evident. And we need to really understand how the system works in terms of decision-making processes. We need to understand what is the data and information that policymakers and private sectors use to take decisions, so we can begin changing the course of those decision makers. We need to provide better systems of data, but also all of these issues that you're being raising to us. It's not just issues in the context of what I would call biodiversity action or climate action. Is in the core of human rights. And these are extremely important and relevant efforts. I like very much your challenge to us, Elizabeth. We accept your challenge. We need to understand how do we invest and work together with the youth. We are being very sincere and honest in our need to work together, be guided, and help. And yes, of course, we need to begin understanding those potential synergies, so we can all together help countries be more consistent in their policies, more respectful of civil rights. I would like to conclude my reaction to you, Elizabeth, by also sharing a challenge to everybody here. The GEF has been seen as the financial mechanism, the largest financial fund. It is the largest financial fund for environmental sustainability in the planet, but it has seen as the financial mechanism to countries. Unfortunately, we confuse the term country with government. We tend to believe that this is the financial mechanism for governments, and that is not true. It is the financial mechanism for countries, and countries are more than just governments. We have this very clear, and we need to walk the talk, and GEF 8 is a great opportunity to bring non-state actors as direct beneficiaries of the GEF resources. This is very challenging. This is our north. This is our intention. This is what we will be working in the next few years. And we understand the political challenges associated to move into that direction. If we work with all stakeholders at the base of our society, that change can happen quicker. So this is a little bit about what we look forward into the future, generating direct access, facilitating it to non-state actors is extremely important because it's in the core of our GEF mandate to move this irrational, unsustainable consumption and production system into one that recognizes planetary boundaries and that is inclusive. It is right-based. It is fundamental in terms of rights. So Elizabeth, thank you so much for your participation today. You and everybody's here guidance to the GEF as we approach the next GEF cycle is extremely important, and I thank you for this. So with this, I will pass it over to Gabriela. Gabriela, the floor is yours.
And thank you, Carlos Manuel, and thank you very much, Elizabeth. I am hoping that in the reflections in the last segment of the day, that where we will have some council member from Canada speaking, that they can also reflect on the questions and the challenge that you provided in your speech. And I hope that Tom will be ready. He will have at least an hour or two to think about it. So I'm hoping that he will come back to you on that question, Elizabeth. And thank you again. And thank you also, Sano, for your welcoming, and David as well. So I know I'm a little bit cognizant of the time, so I will be the push the agenda forward. So we're going to move now to the Small Grants Program, and a very brief presentation. The Small Grants Program, as Carlos Manuel was mentioning earlier, is a program, a corporate program of the GEF. It's been with the GEF since almost close to 30 years now, and it's implemented by the UNDP, the UN Development Program, and which I hope that you will hear now a little bit of what this program, the Small Grants Program, has done to support youth, and actually talking to a couple of the issues that Elizabeth was raising in her keynote speech. So instead of hearing me, why don't we hear directly from UNDP and the global manager of the Small Grants Program, Yoko Watanabe. I'm going to hand it over to you to moderate this short and brief session. Thank you so much, Yoko.
Thank you so much, Gabriela, and thank you so much, the GEF CEO, Carlos Manuel, and also Elizabeth, for that really inspiring and powerful message. It is my great pleasure to join you today at this consultation meeting and present to you the GEF Small Grants Program latest brochure entitled Youth in Action, the experience from the GEF Small Grants Program, and hope this will provide a little bit of what we have been doing already with youth on the ground, and then also what we can, and discuss what we can do more and just scale up the work. And this is a publication that is about youth and prepared by our youth intern and supported by the youth and youthful staff at the Small Grants Program. And this magazine style publication highlights some of the examples of the youth innovation and intergenerational efforts on global environmental issues. And as Gabriela briefly mentioned, the Small Grants Program has been the key window for supporting the community and the CSOs around the world. And we are active now in 128 countries. And we invested about close to 700 million in supporting 26,000 community projects around the globe. And we have a particular focus in supporting Indigenous peoples, women, persons with disability, and of course, the youth. And this is a key focus of our program. And through the support and partnership with the Small Grants Program, the youth is acquiring knowledge and skills to build more sustainable future. And we will be showcasing that, and Pradeep Kukurasiria will be introducing and officially launching the publication today. So before getting into that, why don't we see the work on the ground through visual? And I'd like to show a short video highlighting SGP's work on the ground. Please play the video on the screen. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the youth around the world being in action. I would like now to welcome Mr. Pradeep Kurukursurya, the Director of Nature, Climate and Energy, and Executive Coordinator of the Environmental Finance of UNDP, to officially launch the SGP Youth Magazine, The Youth in Action. The floor is yours, Pradeep.
Thank you, Yoko. Dear colleagues, distinguished participants, it is indeed a pleasure to join you today at this consultation meeting on youth-led advocacy and solutions, and to launch together with you this publication on youth in action of the GEF Small Grants Program. I mean, I think it's really inspiring to hear, colleagues such as Elizabeth and be reminded of the reasons why we do what we do, and the reasons why we also need to do more than what we do. And in that context, I'm especially proud of this partnership we have with the Global Environment Facility and the Small Grants Program. It is an incredibly important vehicle through which to reach youth and to support a number of important initiatives around the world. I think we all recognize that youth are the torchbearers of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. They are the ones that are going to play a critical role, and they are playing a critical role as key actors driving the implementation of the agenda. And we need to ensure, we need to protect, we need to mobilize the active engagement of youth as a vital contribution to address the climate and biodiversity crisis that we are currently faced with, and to try and work towards the sustainable, inclusive, stable societies that we all, I think, aspire to see. In that context, UNDP's partnership with the GEF Small Grants Program, really has placed youth as the primary stakeholders at the center of this program, and really are seen as the future leaders and agents of change for sustainable development. About 40% of SGP projects have active participation of youth, not only to help them with empowerment through targeted investments to address youth priorities, but also to ensure that we bring the voices of the youth to the global stage and shape the conversations that are taking place. It is, after all, their future that's at stake here, and that we're all desperately trying to address. And in this context, I think a lot of work has gone into addressing skills and capacity gaps that have been identified by youth stakeholders. There has been an innovation program on youth and climate change that has enabled youth to work towards green jobs, initiate green enterprises, and lead various actions locally and nationally. And the examples in this publication from different countries around the world in different contexts, from Guatemala to Vietnam to Seychelles, really illustrate the ingenuity, the dedication, the energy of young people in leading scalable, innovative solutions that will have and have had an incredibly important impact in addressing climate and nature-related crises. To pursue a sustainable future for our planet, we need to further invest and support young people to acquire the necessary knowledge and skills that enable them to be the future leaders of their communities and countries around. And we hope that these local solutions that have been championed by youth and highlighted in this brochure will be a source of inspiration to all in transforming our societies for a better future. So thank you very much, and I really hope this conversation goes well today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pradeep, for that remark and your support, and recognize youth as a center of our program and addressing the climate and biodiversity crisis that we face today. This publication is now available on the GEF and SGP website to download. And please click on the link at the chat box where you can find the link to this publication in our website. And I would like to really take this opportunity to thank all of you who have worked on this publication together, particularly the youth on the ground, who are the focus of the stories and who brought the successes and the inspiring approaches and tools. With all our partners, SGP is committed to continue investing in and scaling up our work and empower young people. And I really think that this is a start at this CSO consultation meeting, where we hear from the youth and try to strive together to scale up this work jointly and as a key partner of the GEF Small Grants Program and the other programs that will be following. So thank you again, and I'll return back the stage to Gabriela. Thank you.
And thank you both Yoko and Pradeep, and for the great video and for the good sort of explanation of what the Small Grants Program is doing and its ambitions moving forward. So thank you very much. We also had a question in the chat of not only about the SGP, but also how the GEF in its other programs and projects are supporting youth activities. And yes, there are we have many projects that are engaging youth, and youth are part of both the project design and the implementation and others. And in fact, that's a good segment to the next session that we have today. We have a great panel with both recipients from the small grants programs, but also others that have been benefiting from the GEF financing or managed without it and not been part of it. And so this session, and why I said it was a good segment, is Maria Leichner, who will be moderating this session. She is the founder and director of Fundación Ecos, that actually is an NGO in Uruguay that is receiving financing from the GEF, and that is also engaging youth in policy discussions and platforms. Maria Leichner is also the co-chair of the CSO network, working in close collaboration with Sano that you heard earlier today. As you can see, we have a fabulous lineup here with 5 panelists, and we have decided to make this without any PowerPoint presentation, and Maria is planning to do this as a conversation. And so that we will hear more from youth. And actually now I'm thinking we have gone already almost 1.5 hours, and we have only had one youth, but she was very special. So thank you, Elizabeth. But now it is the time to really hear the voices and the ideas and the achievements of youth. So I want with that, just hand over to Maria Leichner, and please ask all of the discussants to put on their videos so we can see you and make sure that we can hear you, and remind you all to speak slower than I just did. Thank you so much. Over to you, Maria.
Thank you, Gabriela. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, because we are in different parts of the world. I want to just thank you, Gabriela, and everyone to prepare all the consultation with us. And I want to just make this that we've been just prepare like a dialogue, and maybe it's an answer to Elizabeth, what the other young people have to say today. We been dialogue during this last 24 hours with each one of my panelists. We have a very close chat, and we empower ourselves to be just not to forget to be a dreamer, and to just have a very, very strong, because they are a group of 5 panelists that are absolutely incredible people, just doing their work here and there and around the world. But I first want to thank you, Carlos Manuel, especially to be part of the GEF family. And I want to talk about the family because I feel after just being in the GEF for more than 25 years, I just saw born the SGP. The small grant program was a very successful program, and this is part of, see Yoko, you know, Yoko is part of our network from the beginning. She was the North America regional focal point. And that means she born like us in the same arena. It's part of the family, the strong family that we are. And just mention how important is family in the concept of something like a fund, like a trust, or it's because we have the same dream, and the dream is to have a better planet, and share that with the young people that we are around. It's just the young people that is part of the process that we've been just following for a long time. And I remember in 2002, I was young at that time, and we discussed at the World Economic Forum, when I was named Global Leader of Tomorrow. I mean, it was not a leader for that time. I was just a leader for some time that I didn't know when it's coming. What is that to be tomorrow? It doesn't mean if I say something to you like, okay, maybe tomorrow you have the opportunity to be. But we, as the GEF family, we open the door to the young people that to be now, today, the leaders that change our thing, but change with the respect of all the way that we've been opening for you. I want to have a clear in mind that thinking about sustainable development at that moment was so innovative that people in the streets, they say, what are you working for? Sustainable development is what? And can you imagine just following that for years and years? And people just say, okay, what is this? And now, what happened with the millennials? That I want to just point at that. And I want you to just answer this. Is the thing of be activists, that we all being activists here. Everyone have the activists inside. But also, you need to be not only a millennial to just put things that they are wrong. You are part of the solution. You need to be active, innovative, and respect the whole system, and also respect the grown-up that been just go through that light in the tunnel. That today you have the opportunity, but you have to hurry to be just the leader today. And just saying that, and thank you everyone, I just give the word to Alba Jacabalchev. That's Alba from Guatemala. She been really an incredible woman, coming from Mother Earth. That's what she put on the very, very strong dialogue with her. She's an indigenous woman. She's a young woman from Maya Quiche. And we talk and we remind with Alba yesterday about the Popol Vuh and the importance of have the connection with the mother, with the mother's heart. Estoy pensando en español, es Madre Tierra. Bueno, Alba, la palabra es tuya. Alba, please.
Muy buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches a todos los que nos están viendo a través de este medio, a las autoridades del GEF que nos están acompañando. Muchas gracias, María, por la presentación. Para mí es un gusto poder estar aquí participando. Un saludo desde Guatemala. Gracias por la presentación. Bueno, mi involucramiento precisamente en temas ambientales, yo creo que surge precisamente desde el entorno en el que yo he crecido. Como lo decía María, yo soy una mujer maya quiché, indígena de Guatemala. Y bueno, nosotros crecemos y somos formados en una relación muy estrecha con la naturaleza, con los recursos naturales por la cosmovisión que nosotros tenemos. Entonces yo creo que a partir de eso surge mi inquietud y la necesidad también de estar trabajando en temas ambientales. Considero que actualmente ante el fenómeno del cambio climático que estamos pasando, enfrentando, es importante que como jóvenes accionemos, nos involucremos y seamos partícipes de espacios como este en procesos de tomas de decisiones y también estemos participando en generar soluciones para ir enfrentando el cambio climático desde nuestras comunidades. Yo estudié Relaciones Internacionales y bueno, a partir de eso también he tenido un involucramiento en espacios como este y actualmente que soy parte de la pasantía indígena del programa de pequeñas donaciones del GEF, pues he tenido un desenvolvimiento más profundo en temas ambientales y en proyectos donde el GEF tiene participación y que el GEF está apoyando. Durante esta pasantía yo he estado trabajando con mujeres y jóvenes indígenas tratando el tema de empoderamiento, considerando que estos son elementos muy importantes dentro de las comunidades para que las mujeres puedan ser partícipes de los espacios de tomas de decisiones y puedan tener una participación más real dentro de los proyectos. He estado participando en 4 proyectos precisamente con el tema de género y bueno, en cada uno de los proyectos pues se maneja una realidad, cada proyecto tiene una realidad desde las comunidades donde están ubicados estos proyectos y existen muchas ideas innovadoras para enfrentar el cambio climático y más allá de enfrentar el cambio climático, de generar condiciones adecuadas de vida para las personas que el programa está cubriendo. Considero bastante importante la participación también de la juventud, porque la juventud tiene la capacidad de poder desenvolverse y más ahora que bueno, es parte de nosotros esta responsabilidad de poder generar acciones para enfrentar el cambio climático. Así que es un gusto poder estar aquí.
Gracias, Alba. Thank you, Alba. And now is the time to Barsha Leki. I want to just highlight about Barsha. Is a very activist person to have. She's a Miss Nepal. She's we've been talking this morning about Kathmandu and where she based and she's born, and actually she has been a postgraduate in environmental studies, and she's a wonderful body and soul together and mind. And I want she to express herself and how can you just use the visibility that we need also that in the GEF, the visibility of to be active and to promote the environmental movement, very active. It's your time, Barsha. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Hello, everyone. Greetings from Nepal. Namaskar. So talking about my inspiration, like Alba said, even I was born and brought up in a family where indigenous issues and environmental issues are discussed now and then, even in dining table while we have our lunch, dinner. So my father was and is an indigenous people's activist and still works on that. So I get inspired by his work, and that's how I guess my inspiration started from. I'm talking about my journey as beauty queen. I've always felt that our voices as indigenous peoples and as environmental issues should be heard on a longer or a wider population of people, and how stronger visibility and presence and voicing out our issues is very important in today's arena where social media is everything. And that is how I started my career, and my education is too is environmental sciences, and that's how I came to know about Indigenous Peoples Fellowship of the Small Grants Program. And as an Indigenous Peoples Fellow of the SGP, I got the opportunity to work with young social entrepreneurs, conservationists, and traditional healers who were engaged in environmental issues. Nepal is rich in indigenous knowledge, skills, and sustainable practices, but we have a gap in documentation. I mean, there's a lot of work to do in documentation, and that's what was the key objective of my fellowship, was to make a portfolio of their work contributing to environment. So I interviewed and prepared 10 different stories of such inspiring environmental warriors. The idea was to reach out to a wider range of audiences, consumers, with their impeccable stories about their journey, about their challenges, about their achievements, which would help the further youth to pave their career in green enterprises or initiatives, and in the fields of conservation. Talking about my intervention as Indigenous Peoples Fellow of the Small Grants Program, I supported Biodiversity, who are the traditional doctors or healers of Tarai region in Nepal. I supported them by providing solar dryer to 8 different biodiversities through the fellowship grant. The idea was to introduce and acquaint them with renewable energy to Indigenous peoples to meet their needs, as well as to combat climate change effects by shifting to solar technology. At present, I have been receiving positive feedback from Biodiversity saying that my support, or the support from SGP, has brought tremendous impact in their, not just in their lives, but in the service that they provide to the patient, because using solar dryer to desiccate the twigs, the leaves, the fruits of those medicinal herbs has become easier. Even they are actually dried in a closed box, which helps in to keep those medicines not contaminate from dust, pollen, or even animals like pets, cats, dogs, or even insects. So in that way, the quality medicines or quality healing herbs could be provided to the patients. And also that would give a greater outcome in the long run, because that is directly connected to human health. Later, I made a video documentation on Baidoa and posted it in my YouTube channel, which has more than 1,000 viewers. I mean, more than 1,600 viewers. So this video not only reached a mass of people, but also connected people to this traditional healing system, thereby creating a connection between furthermore patient and the Baidoa. So what I believe is, in talking about youth in Nepal, we can categorize in 2 different categories. One is the well-educated academic youth, and the other is the non-educated or non-academic youth. So how I believe is, by providing green jobs to educated youth can be one of the solution. But what about the non-academic youth? So to address the issues of non-academic youth, what we can do is provide them with a small grant project so that they can implement them in their local areas and help combat climate change and environmental issues. For example, we have in Nepal, we have a youth who has started up his own enterprise social green enterprise, I must say, that aims to create employment opportunities for indigenous people by creating a market selling naturally made products like honeybees, for example, honey, and bananas, and product which are nature-based, for example, broomsticks and so on. So, projects like this have not only helped in entrepreneurship skills, but also it is an important step in environmental conservation and protection through the reintroduction of naturally made products. So yeah, that's all from my side for now. Back to you.
Thank you, Barja. That was a very inspirational, and really we are very happy to have you here. Now we are going to Ezequiel Shibesi. As a direct result of Shibesi Ezequiel 4 years grassroots campaign, the Ghanaian Minister of Environment canceled the construction of 700 megawatt coal power plant and adjoining shipping port to import coal. The coal power plant would have been Ghana first. Ezequiel activism stopped the coal industry from entering Ghana and steered the nation's energy future away from the coal. I think this is absolutely unbelievable effort and activity from Ezequiel that we know, and after we talked with Ezequiel yesterday about the Glasgow 27, and coal mining is a weird thing that we can face it today, and it's still there. I mean, you are a hero. Now the word is yours.
Thank you, Maria, and good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to everyone. I'm happy to have been invited to these important discussions, and I've had some relation with GEF over the years through the GEF CSO network, and I'm always delighted to see very familiar faces like Gabriela and Susan on the call. Yeah, so talking about youth innovations and environmental solutions, let me start with the code campaign that Maria raised. One of the things we did as a youth movement was about local community engagement. So because it was quite a very difficult task, we were then in a serious crisis. We wanted energy to grow. Government wanted energy to create jobs for young people. And here we are going to fight the government to say no to coal. So we have to really strategize and bring out some meaningful alternative that will compel government to shut down its plan to build a coal plant. So the whole idea was to not only resist the coal plant, but to offer a better alternative, which is about renewable energy. And then, so that was for us the clear solutions that we provided. And for want of time, I'll just tackle just one or two reasons how we got to overcome the coal campaign. The first one was the fact that government wanted to build a coal plant for two reasons. One, because coal is cheap, as they indicate in power generation. And secondly, also is going to lead to employment generation. So we have to come up with some compelling reason or argument against those two reasons by which government wants to build a coal plant. In terms of it being cheap, economically, it is true that coal is cheap when it comes to energy generation, but there are other externalities that government did not look at in terms of the environmental consequences, health consequences, which would mean additional costs to the government. So coal is not cheap per se, but if you add the other externalities, it makes it very expensive. So that argument we thought was not, the best. Again, if you talk about employment, we believe that renewable energy creates more employment as compared to coal. Because if you look at renewable energy along the value chain, solar energy, wind energy, biofuel, creates more jobs as compared to coal. So if it's about job creation, then we believe that renewable energy is far better than coal. So those are some of the other arguments we advanced in our campaign against the coal plant, and government eventually had to concede and shut down the plans to build a coal plant. But moving away from that, we did not stop when the coal plant was cancelled. We actually went ahead to do campaigns on renewable energy, given the fact that we felt that was the only way by which we can industrialize or grow as a country. So we began a number of campaigns, being led by young people And I'm going to touch about 3 or 4 of them just to give us youth innovation and creativity in that regard. When government canceled a plan to build a coal plant, in May 2019, the government came out with a renewable energy master plan. Interestingly, China was supporting government to build a coal plant, but ever since the coal plant was canceled, the government of China is now supporting government to develop renewable energy. So in that document, it says that by 2030, government is hoping to create about 230,000 jobs. That is government's responsibility. But for us as young people, we say, look, we can't only hold government accountable, and 2, government alone cannot create jobs. So young people, what can we do as a contribution to job creation? So I'm happy to say that we have about 6 green entrepreneurs who are converting waste into clean energy. So they are turning like the waste from palm kernel to pellets as against the use of charcoal. So in that regard, we are helping to deal with deforestation and also to cut down, on further destruction. So again, that is direct youth contribution to the process. So these are all small scale efforts being done by young people who need support to upscale. Secondly, the government of Ghana, of course, we all know about the NDCs. For the first time in Ghana's enhanced NDCs, youth is mentioned about 4 times as a result of our advocacy work, because we also want to contribute and ensure that we hold the government accountable and also bring to bear our skills and our expertise. Thirdly, we believe that climate change is cross-cutting. And what we have done as a youth group is to engage the local state agencies to mainstream climate change into their respective development plan. Again, this is also actions being taken by young people to demonstrate their contribution to climate action. And finally, the government of Ghana has won $3 million from the Green Climate Fund to develop our national adaptation plan. And I'm happy to announce that government is engaging youth actively in the process. And this is one area that I think that GEF also can do well. I've been part of the GEF process, but in spite of all the support that GEF is giving to the government of Ghana, I have not seen much effort bringing young people to the table as against what GCF is doing. So I think that this is some lesson that I believe GEF can take up. Even when it comes to youth, and I've seen the video that is being shown, I see country talking about the LGP support for the youth. But in Ghana, I cannot put a hand on any project or any intervention to say that it is supported by the LGP. So again, even when it comes to the LGP, there seems to be some inequalities, in how young people are engaged across the continent and across the country. So I want to again challenge GEF and GC and the LGP process to ensure that there's some equity, across the nation, that youth are engaged, youth are benefiting, they are living in the communities, they must have access to some little grants to also push their innovative ways. So basically, this will be my short contribution in this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ezequiel. That's a great presentation from your part. Now we have to move directly to Maribel, because we are just running with the time, like always. Maribel Satis Aguilar is an 18-year-old girl who belongs to the Chiloja community in the municipality of San Juan, to speak the original Tzotzil language, and she learned from the grandmother as be a textile artisan and promote the cultural value from Cambis. And she been very, very outstanding student, and he been activist as a municipal councillor, promoted different actions to make human rights reality. She is an indigenous activist, and she's been at the Faculty of School of Liderazgos Entrañables. And she is here with us. And Maribel, la palabra es tuya.
Gracias, pues muy buenos días a todos y todas. Mi nombre es Maribel Santis Aguilar, soy originaria de San Juan, Cancuc, Chiapas, México. Tengo 18 años. Represento a las y los jóvenes de los pueblos originarios de Mesoamérica. Bueno, aquí voy a participar, a decir un poco sobre cómo estoy viviendo en mi pueblo. Y también quiero que conozcan a mi traductora, porque quiero que también ustedes escuchan cómo es el sonido de Tzeltal. Yo voy a participar aquí en mi lengua originaria y quiero que escuchen también cómo es el tono y el sonido. Pues aquí mi compañera me va a ayudar a traducir.
Hola, buenos días. Mi nombre es Andrea López López, igual soy originaria de Aldama, en Chiapas, México. Soy hablante de Tzotzil. Pues aquí estoy para apoyar a Maribel como traductora, por si llegara a necesitar. Gracias.
Aquí voy a empezar platicando en español y cuando quiero hablar en celtal va a traducir mi compañera. En este caso voy a platicar sobre la preocupación de las personas y los jóvenes, mujeres y tanto hombres en mi pueblo. Es que ahorita tenemos una gran preocupación como ahorita todo lo que sembramos allá en mi pueblo ya no estamos cosechando como actualmente cosechábamos. Ya nos está dando poco lo que tenemos, así como el principal actividad económica de allá en mi pueblo es el café, pero ahorita ya no estamos, ya no nos está dando lo que es el café, ya no cosechamos. Está pasando todo esto porque ya se perdió el respeto hacia el medio ambiente. Ya no estamos respetando eh, ya no estamos cuidando más bien, porque ya tiramos todo lo que es la basura, ya no juntamos y todo eso, pues en este caso, pues ya las personas ya empezaron a utilizar lo que es los químicos, pero eso es contaminación del suelo. Pues las personas piensan que es muy bueno, y piensan que eso les puede salvar, pero no. Aparte de eso, pues todo lo que ya se está cosechando, pues ya está contaminado, ya tiene químico. Pues así como nosotros como jóvenes tenemos las iniciativas donde nos están capacitando sobre el medio ambiente. Y ahorita pues lo que queremos hacer para solucionarlo esto es que queremos hacer una campaña sobre recoger basuras y todo eso, platicar con las personas para, para que nos puedan apoyar y también dejar de utilizar los químicos, porque además de eso nosotros estamos afectando también porque estamos consumiendo lo que les estamos dando químico. Eso es lo que estamos pensando como jóvenes. Y lo bueno es que ahorita ya hay unas iniciativas donde nos están capacitando, donde estamos viendo sobre todo el medio ambiente. Y quiero que logremos eso, pues la mayor preocupación de las personas es porque ya estamos sufriendo, ya hay un cambio climático, ya casi ya no es como tiempo normal como antes vivían los tatarabuelos. Pues las preocupaciones es porque, bueno, tal vez podemos vivir más o menos bien estos como unos más de 5 o 6 años, pero el que sufren más después son los niños y los niños que vienen detrás de nosotros. Ellos van a sufrir más después. Pues como joven líder estoy participando en una organización donde hay puras mujeres. Estamos viendo sobre el derecho de las mujeres y queremos lograr eso y estamos en hacerles que participen a las mujeres. Pues en estos casos vemos a muchas mujeres que lo discriminan, pues eso es lo que quieren, lo que ya no queremos tener el paz también, pues bueno, pues en eso estamos trabajando, estamos platicando con las mujeres, pero lo bueno es que ya se está, bueno, a través de mi familia también ya se está cambiando por cómo respetar a las mujeres, sobre en este caso, pues sobre el medio ambiente, estamos viendo sobre, hay unos temas donde vemos sobre el medio ambiente, sobre la tierra. Pues ahorita como mujeres ya hay pocas mujeres, poquitas mujeres que ya le están dando derecho hacia la tierra y que ya tienen un poco de propiedad hacia la tierra. Pues también estoy participando en unas iniciativas sobre el medio ambiente en una organización donde estamos trabajando con jóvenes también, y con jóvenes y hombres, tanto mujeres. Pues también en esto ya estamos viendo que ya estamos trabajando para motivar a más jóvenes que se junten con nosotros donde estamos, para que así entre más somos, más poder tenemos para lograr lo que queremos lograr sobre el buen vivir, lo que le decimos el de Kilkush Lehal. Pues eso es lo que queremos, tanto como así estamos, vemos cómo hay muchos cambios aquí en mi pueblo. Por eso es que estamos trabajando con los jóvenes, porque no queremos que los que vienen detrás de nosotros sufren. Y así como nosotros también, ya se está perdiendo lo que es nuestra cultura y todo lo que sobre el respeto de los lugares sagrados, eso ya nos está llevando a cabo. Pero eso es lo que queremos, recuperarlo todo, quiere recuperar lo que como vivían antes, antes los tatarabuelos. Queremos tener el buen vivir, el de Kilkushihal, queremos lograr recuperar nuestra cultura, recuperar nuestro traje regional, porque eso es lo que ya nos está llevando a cabo. Todos como jóvenes ya nos está dando pena en utilizar, pues respetar también nuestra cultura, ya nos está dando pena hablar en nuestra lengua. En este caso, pues, eso sería, pues, mi recomendación para el fondo del FM, algo así. Pues, yo lo que quiero es que nos brinden más apoyo como capacitación, más taller y todo eso, pues, sí, sería necesario para ellos, pues, lo que yo quiero como joven. Lo más importante que quiero es que nos brinden un apoyo sobre que nos envíen plantas para sembrar más árboles, para que así no suframos, y también podamos tener el buen oxígeno no contaminado, porque desde el oxígeno produce también los árboles y todo eso es lo que queremos. Y también queremos invitarles a que si un día pueden, a que llegan a conocer cómo viven realmente aquí los jóvenes, las personas aquí en mi pueblo, para que así puedan ver también cómo ya está el cambio y todo eso. Pues hich la calvesta pisili bukola balik de la pasonik invitar a una organización y todo de un foro ya acá kilbetik ahorita ni y ashbayels buskotana monik de la viconige y hich ya las cholves y shabayik usted bukte visite cambio etikta eta sventa tote lukina hotik tavanti kushilotike.
Agradece mucho por el espacio y la invitación que les ha dado. Para ella es muy importante porque pudo expresar iniciativas muy importantes que se le nace en su corazón, compartirlos con ustedes, ¿no? Y muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Maribel. Excelente tu más profundo sentir sobre lo que importa hoy de tenerte en ese grupo con esas ganas y siguiendo los lineamientos adelante y acompañada por el fondo, por el GEF. Ahora vamos a pasar rápidamente a Erachit Montasir. He is a volunteer coordinator and project manager with experience engaging students of more than 300 schools in environmental education and planting activities across many regions of Morocco. He succeeded in supporting local communities in planting more than 60,000 free trees. We contribute to reducing the effect of climate change and raising awareness of young students and teachers about climate action. High Atlas Foundation is recently involved in developing a new project aiming at monitoring carbon credit offset the trees planted since 2014 in 24 provinces of Morocco. Please, Rachid, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Maria. It is a great pleasure to be among these brilliant, very nice people. And really, thank you for the opportunity and happy 30 years anniversary for GEF. And I'm really so glad to represent youth in general, but also my kingdom, Morocco. I'm Rashid, and I was born in a rural area. I grew in a rural area, and I was raised by my mom, who is a small farmer right now. And since I was a kid till high school, me and my family were facing so many climate change problems without realizing that. And so year after year, there is water scarcity, and there is a lot of problems that really didn't come to mind that there was actually a climate change and the climate is changing. So till high school, and after high school, I had the opportunity to be a volunteer for this NGO, High Atlas Foundation. And that opened the door for me, and I was, of course, working on different initiatives. Since then, I had a chance to work with schools in Morocco. And so I worked with 365 schools in Morocco. I was planting trees with students, but also delivering environmental workshops for these students. And so step by step, I had a chance to also start conducting participatory approach method, which is the principle of the NGO High Atlas Foundation in Morocco. So the participatory approach also taught me that there is a really, really huge fact between communities, local communities, and governments, and state leaders, and other change makers. And so that means whenever I met community members and we go through a whole process of figuring out their needs and their challenges, environmental challenges and problems in the community, they go, well, we already tried and we developed proposals and we sent it to government, but we never received fund. And so that is a word that I hear every time I visit a community. But then when I go back and I meet with the governors, they go, well, we received the same proposals and same numbers and same statistics, which means these community, they just copy paste other community problems and other community needs, and it just doesn't reflect their real need and their real challenge. And so therefore the money doesn't go to the community, the money goes back. Well, no, we've been planting million trees in Morocco, about 3.5 million trees now. And with, of course, the help of GEF and UNDP, we also grow up some tree nurseries for youth and women in Morocco. And I will mention three main examples as a result from the GF and UNDP help in Morocco. So there's this one in the High Atlas Mountains in Morocco, a tree nursery that was established in 2014. And that tree nursery, since then till now, gave about 90,000 fruit trees that goes for schools, women's cooperative, and farming families in the whole Morocco. And it didn't only provide that, but also it was a great model project to open 2 tree nurseries in the eastern Morocco and the northern Morocco. So, and that of course, 2 of them for women's cooperatives, and now they're providing about 35,000 fruit trees, organic fruit trees every year. And there is the second project that was also a tree nursery, was established for women's cooperative and also the High Atlas Mountains in 2017. And that tree nursery is a great model, as the women are the very first women's cooperative that designed and managed her own projects on themselves. Of course, with orientation, but also those women, those young women, most of them couldn't finish the schools. And now these young women are also, of course, participating in women's empowerment and other tree nursery management. And they also are able to transfer that treasure from their generation to other places in the country. And not only that, so that the second project could bring a fund from Robert Bosch College, and the grant was about $44,000 US. And so, and the third example, it is also a tree nursery in the Medium Atlas Mountains for youth people that also it just started, but they're managing the tree nursery, and they have a goal of providing about 150,000 trees every year. With all of that said, are we doing 100% good? Not really. Are we on a good progress? Not really. So, okay, well, there is a progress, but is it really going in the right way? Is it going as fast as we, the youth people and next generation, as we want? I guess not. And so what actually, the VEG, and so we're trying to link that, but the VEG is still there. And maybe this is also an opportunity that we can address this VEG. And that's through connecting people, connecting cultures, and connecting young people in the world, not only in designing projects and advocating projects, but also following up on projects, which means the follow-up that, of course, will pave the way for other initiatives. All right. So from my experience, I had the opportunity to work with 7 universities in Morocco. And I was training the students of universities to be able to apply the participatory approach method with their own communities, knowing that most of the students in universities in Morocco are coming from rural areas like me. And so on one hand, that these youth people in the universities are engaged and developing and contributing in building big bases of project proposals. And on the other hand, is that these people, they don't have to build trust with their communities because they're coming out from these communities. And so one of the big challenges, probably not only in Morocco, but like worldwide, is to build trust with communities, is to build trust with locals. And so by doing that, we should keep on the work that we're doing, but also engage young people and following up on sustainable projects, environmental projects in general. So I also had a chance to and a pleasure to be one of the organizers of the very first Youth Climate Summit that happened in 2019 in New York, and where I had a chance to meet great people from UNDP there and discuss other ideas. But also, so I heard from the Secretary General himself saying to us, young people, it is not 100% my responsibility to address the other generation needs, which means we have to take the lead, but also not taking the lead ourselves. So there should be orientation, there should be guidance from such a big organizations like you. And so I really call on and other people to from a big organization to engage young people in the whole chain of sustainable environmental projects and connect them. Okay, well, this is a great event connecting us each other. And so by these events also really makes what we young people carry in our hearts achieved and simple. And so now what actually other people are wishing and ambition is just to have a better life, to have a clean planet. And so to really address that, we should gather more. We should apply. We should teach other people and engage them in the whole chain of the project. So, and I really thank you so much again for inviting me. And I wish from this door and this event, we open more doors in the future to continue the great work you and all of the world are doing. So thank you so much once again.
Thank you. Very, very good, your words. And Rajit, you just mentioned something that I want to highlight because it's been just there in my mind, that this generation of young people needs also to have the role models of the good things that will happen in our generation, creating the leadership and creating the space for you now to follow. And it's not good news, everything what happened, but it's something that we are moving from a different paradigm. We, at 30 years ago, when the GEF is not there, we cannot have the opportunity to talk about this. We cannot have the opportunity to include the young people. We cannot have the possibility to be educated in every single part of the planet. We are talking about indigenous people from very, very different parts of the world that now they're educated. The example of Alba, the example of Maribel, and everyone here in the presentation was a common line, that is education, participation, inclusion, and a model to follow. And thank you very much to all. Back to Gabriela.
Thank you so much, everyone. This is just so inspiring, and I am so impressed. And I will not try to summarize anything that has been said, because I would like to just push forward all of the other ones that we have lined up for the next session. In order of time, I'm just going to push forward, and just to let you know, if you have any questions or comments, continue to put those at the chat. Susan is from the GEF Secretariat is looking if there's any questions. We'll try to take them. We can maybe take some questions in the end of both of the sessions. So let me not take more time. Let me then introduce Isha Sharma. Are you there? Can I see you?
Hello, yes, I'm here.
Yes, you are. Hi. Thank you. Isha Sharma will be moderating this session. We have some really great speakers here. And so everyone can see who they are, very quickly, Isha Sharma is working at the Independent Evaluation Office of the World Bank Group and IFC's climate team. She has had a long background working on youth, and she was actually the anchor of the Youth Summit at the World Bank earlier this year. So she has a lot of experiences and background in this, and even more experience probably has all of the great discussants. We have Kaifer Jackson from Guyana, Derek Mugisha from Uganda, Johnny Dabrowski from Poland, and Desmond Alunua from Ghana. So let me not take any more time, and I give it over to you, Isha, to explain what you're going to do in this session. And I see all of the great panelists are now on the video. Thank you all.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone, according to the time zone you're in. Super happy and excited to see you all. Looking forward to the session. And welcome to the second session of GEF Youth Consultation. So, you know, the first session that we had was so enriching, so inspiring in terms of seeing how indigenous people and youth innovations have actually had an impact on society for both people and planet. And so now in this session, the session sort of complements the first session we had by actually providing us with the backstory. It sort of extends the conversation to allow us to see youth stories from a different vantage point, from a different perspective, and to know more of the behind the scenes. So we're actually curious to know, which we're actually usually curious to know, but don't often find out until we have sort of a one-to-one chat with a young person. So the backstory behind how they managed to translate their wish or idea or energy for change into an actionable reality. What was the inspiration? What was the motivation behind their youth advocacy initiatives? What challenges, what obstacles did they face in their way, and how did they overcome that? And most importantly, in this consultation and this conversation, we'll find out, have them share on how GEF can, as an organization and other organizations such as the GEF, can actually help them in scaling their impact and removing any obstacles on their way to deepening their impact journey for the world, to make the world a better place. So it's going to be, even though we're all online, sitting wherever we are, but since the panelists here are really going to share their experiences and vulnerabilities and the good, bad, ugly of the impact journey, it's going to be lovely, intimate, and heartful. So I invite you to join and cozy up and huddle in together. Yeah. So to introduce ourselves in alphabetical order, Susan, Gabriella has already introduced us. So we have Mr. Derek, who's CEO of Biodiversity Hub International from Uganda. We have Mr. Desmond, who is the co-founder of Green Africa Youth Organization from Ghana. We have Mr. Johnny Dabrowski from Climate Education Team for Fridays for Future and the Net Zero School from Poland. And we have Miss Kiefer Jackson, who is the National Coordinator of the Caribbean Youth Environmental Network, joining us from Guyana. So we're looking forward to hearing about them and their work and their story. So to get us started, I would like to ask Kiefer. So Kiefer, you mobilize youth at the grassroots level at the Caribbean African Youth Network. And so can you share why you think capacity building at the grassroots level is so important for youth? And what's your story? How did you become so passionate about what you're doing today, and how did you get involved?
Hi, just following in your tune. Everybody can hear me? Yes. Okay. It's actually the Caribbean Youth Environment Network. So we're based in the Caribbean, and my position is actually in Guyana. For me personally, my story is a little different from everybody else, though I've always been aware of the environment, and I'm obviously aware of what's going on, my surroundings, because I am from a beautiful, lush, green country in South America. Academically and as far as my passion goes, it didn't start off as being a quote unquote tree hugger or environmentalist. So for me, I would place some blame on my parents because they've made me watch hours and hours of shows like Matlock and Perry Mason, which are out of circulation by now, and post me thinking about it as a unique form of torture. I actually became connected to the main characters of those shows and internalized my dream of being in the legal profession. So post my formative years and leading up to my undergrad, I would have completed studies in law. So I have my undergrad in law, but before the end of that undergrad, I was able to intern for a law firm where I had a pretty interesting reality that lawyers are not just in court passionately shouting objection or not just banging a gavel and dismissing people, but it requires a lot more heart in a different sense, which I don't believe fit where I wanted to be, because I knew I always wanted to help people, but I didn't think after that experience I wanted to help people in that way. So in the name of sustenance and being able to afford living going forward as an adult, I did my postgrad at the University of the West Indies in Barbados. And that's at that point, I joined the Caribbean Youth Environment Network in that country. And for the 6 years that I've been a part of the organization, I really fell in love with the developmental sector and the environment in a very different way, because it allowed me the opportunity to have what can only be described as a unique experience that married my legal qualifications as well as my inherent love for the environment, or my inherent passion for the environment. Being a part of the organization, I was able to work with entities and work on education and awareness of young persons and persons in grassroots communities on the Escazú Agreement, for example, and translating what is in essence legalese to broken down understanding that people can really internalize. Well, these agreements are put in place not just for politicians to tell me what to do, but they have an impact on me, they have an impact on my community, they have an impact on my life. So having been able to have that experience, I continue to kind of shift my career path, so to say, and pursuing legal action specifically regarding climate issues, and embracing the marriage that I just talked about. And in the region, being able to pursue legal avenues to transforming climate issues, specifically climate justice, because I think as some of us that have been within the sector for a long time would recognize that we're really shifting to a place where we're looking at the legal ramifications for agreements and how we can really put systems in place so that there is something sturdy, something strong that can hold persons accountable, or hold governments accountable, hold companies accountable. So working in the region to really facilitate that, really take this not only on a high level forums, but to bring it to grassroots level and to really have persons understanding how these things really affect them and impact them. So yeah.
That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that, how you combined law and how you found, an avenue with your professional degree in climate and how you're working for climate justice and having actually those interconnected. That's very inspirational. So I'd like to move to Desmond, who's also doing a lot of grassroots work. Oh, also, excuse me for saying Caribbean Youth Environmental Network. So I would like to move to Desmond, who's also doing a lot of grassroots work. So Desmond, would you like to share what the Green Africa Youth Organization does, and how did you come up and how did you join it? And also your waste-based model on the circular economy. Would love to hear from you.
Thank you, Isa, and thank you, everyone. I'm really glad to be here. My story is quite a direct or personal experience because I was born and raised in the rural areas of Ghana, the extreme north, where we are extremely hit by the drought and other climatic extreme weather conditions. And so I always had the opportunity, I always wished for the opportunity to make changes, to make sure that people, the minority in terms of the power structures, are able to make input to decisions that shape our lives. So I started as a youth activist, and now forming the Green Africa Youth Organization in 2014, we currently work actively in 3 thematic areas. One is circular economy, like you mentioned, one is disaster risk reduction, and then another is climate. So I will start reverse, the climate sector. We have our project, which is Trees for Biodiversity and Urban Forestry, which is helping to build community resilience in urban areas by reforesting such urban areas with indigenous trees and helping communities to sort of adapt to urban heat waves and other conditions that are making life unbearable in these communities in the cities. This is a way of helping communities and the government to rethink urbanization and how to progress in the future. Trees for Biodiversity, for the past 3 years, we've been able to plant 17,000 trees. And we recently launched our case study, which is a result of this planting and growing, which is titled How to Plant and Grow Trees Right. And this is very generic. It's for both in the urban areas and also for the rural areas. And then the other project under climate change is also the Water for Adaptation and Period Poverty. So as a youth-led gender balance organization, we also identified that one of the barriers to female education in Ghana has always been the fact that those who were coming from these arid communities did not have access to water, sometimes to even wash themselves before going to school. And so they end up, sometimes the young boys are stronger and the girl water where they are queuing to fetch water, and so therefore is absenting themselves. The other part of the problem was that they did not have ability to even access basic materials or to sell anything, since the crops are not doing well, in order to afford sanitary pads. So this project is providing potable water for irid communities, and as well as producing sanitary pads for girls who come from these rural communities. And it's really selling really low for those communities because they hardly can afford other things. And then the last part of that climate part is that we successfully put forward and supported the country to set up a Youth Climate Council, which is now trying to collaborate with Youth Climate Council. This is a platform to integrate youth voices and to mainstream young people's discussions into national discussions as far as climate change and climate issues are concerned. We work in a way that we identify the barrier and then we try to tackle that. So for this Youth Climate Council, it was a conscious effort on the fact that there are a lot of young people who are doing different things on climate change. One thing was that they are not able to consolidate their effort. And another thing was that they are working in isolation is not allowing their voice. Decide that it project their voices by bringing them under one umbrella where they are able to do consultation, the continent able to mainstream the result of those consultations into the discussions that matter, because trust me, at the end of the day, usually it's only few of the young people who have access to some of the meetings that really make the decisions. So if the voices are not together, these young people who get to represent us are then speaking from individual perspectives and rather than a collective. And so that was the strategy. Then for the disaster risk reduction, we work with the National Disaster Organization, sensitizing communities, because flooding and other issues are very common in Ghana, sensitizing communities and schools in order to help them know how to handle disasters, know how to respond to disasters when they do happen. Then the circular economy, which I am very much also involved. This is a project that targets waste management. So currently we work actively in 4 cities in Ghana and then 1 city in Mali. And then the strategy is that every waste that is produced, that can be produced, must become a resource. And if it cannot become a resource, then it's not worth producing in the first place. So we are converting hard to degrade agricultural waste into charcoal briquette to replace the open burning and the other deforestation things that communities normally do in order to get biofuel or to get cooking fuel. And then the other part is we're composting, we're supporting farmers with organic compost where they are able to rejuvenate their soil biodiversity in order to produce crops and increase their yield. Then the other part is that we are converting, recycling some plastics to produce raincoats, produce shopping bags and other artifacts that are having good market value from waste. The major part of this is actually the movement building aspect, because one thing that we've also identified in the past has always been that the waste pickers, the informal waste workers, they have less capacity to compete for certain jobs in the formal sector. However, they have been able to divert significant amount of waste from landfills and dump sites in the country. But then their activities and their efforts are less recognized, and even in some communities in Ghana, they used to be criminalized. Their activities used to be criminalized by municipal authorities. And so I did a research in 2016, 2017, and when I found this result that certain activities of, I apologize, I'm parked somewhere on the road. When I realized that certain activities of waste pickers were actually criminalized, and some of them had to spend some days even away because they've been found at the dump site, I decided that we needed to actually put together a project that directly respond to this challenge and help the government to see the big picture. So we started a sustainable community project, which inculcates these waste pickers. So we build a movement, and that ensures that we bridge that gap between the district assemblies, the state actors, and the waste pickers. So now we have the part that is the waste picker integration. So the waste picker integration is we're working with MMDAs, the district of officials, to make sure that we mobilize all the waste workers in each of the district. We sensitize them, we run workshops that help them build their capacity, and then we now integrate them into the National Waste Management Program. Therefore, they are recognized as a key stakeholder that is able to support the country. So in all, we work in these 3 areas, and I would put some other additional information in the chat so that anybody who wants to learn more would be able to learn more. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Desmond. And you're very right about, consolidating youth efforts and allowing our voices as youth to be heard together so that collective rather than individual perspectives are shared. And speaking of youth communications and advocacy, we have Derek from Biodiversity Hub International. So Derek, how do you use, what Desmond talked about, advocacy, communications, campaigning, to forward biodiversity goals at Biodiversity Hub International?
Yes, thank you very much. I think I would first of all express my dissatisfaction that such kind of conversations always come last during such kind of events. Yet, there are people who might want this kind of information at the beginning. So it's always important to put youth first. Before even we do the keynotes, it's important that the discussions kickstart. When I started my advocacy work, it was like 6 years ago. And as a young person who was just interested in seeing animals, and one day we came across people who were just, slaughtering a hippopotamus just because they felt it had no importance in the society. This is a place near a channel. And you find that it's not that they didn't know, but also they're not seeing the value because we have not been telling them the value of some species in their communities. And so I felt like there is lack of information, first of all. But again, communities have lived with this nature for quite a long time. The indigenous people have kept these areas intact. It's just that these governments, like where I am, that just love selling out natural resources. And if you hear a forest that was bigger, like Mavira Forest, used to be one of the biggest in Africa. Now it's no more. There is an investor who had to take that up. And you can't just sit there and look at such kind of injustices happen. You can't look at the donors saying they're investing, but again, they can't account the progress. And it's key that up to now, we are still having the same crisis. It's actually becoming more worse. But again, we are still here saying we are investing with the different funds that exist. But at the same time, we should know that even these funds do not reach the people on ground. At times, it ends in offices of the big corporations, the big NGOs, and they do not go read on ground. So it's important that we had to find a way in which people are part of this process. And the first thing to do is use the power of storytelling. So when you tell stories, there's so many of our old people who used to, our grandfathers and grandmothers know how they used to keep those forests. But because it's this generation, like one of the speakers say, that is actually destroying this ecosystem and all the beautiful species that we have, it was key that we start up something where we can nurture. So it's more than nurturing through storytelling, through the power of advocacy. Because again, even the leaders I'm talking about, including even those from NGOs, at times I don't even try to say it, even NGOs, when they're implementing, you find that most of the budgets go towards their own kind of, operations work than the money they dedicate to community. So when you hear such kind of things, and they say, for example, the GEF has been investing. I will tell you, if you come into my country and ask people on ground if the GEF, they know the GEF, it's hard, but this is the biggest environmental, fund. So you find that we have to connect this with communications. How do we communicate from the different drives that we do in communities, from extending solar kind of drives, from having nights, or even people in bars. Actually, we have people in bars as well, because at times they have come to spend, but we tell them, hey, how about you spend this kind of money on, channeling your community to lighting, and they're using green energy and things like that. So The other one was campaigning. During the COVID period, most people had to go back home. Now, do you know what happened? People did not have food. There are no food banks anywhere around. There's some seeds. The governments are not even giving out seeds for planting because, again, it's even hard to predict when the planting season is going to happen because of the climate crisis. So what we had to do, we had to extend a hand in terms of a campaign that we passionately love, where we reach out to people with our food relief, where again, we have to find ways. That's why the hub now exists, is we have to nurture these solutions, because there are farmers who might have multiplied their kind of input to see that they can feed people. But now I'm telling you, the crisis has destabilized everything. It's really hard to even predict the next food you have tomorrow. So most of these things, we have used government, we have used NGOs, and passionately, the other organization I work with, Earth Day, has really empowered us and supported us to really go to communities and try to do ecosystem restoration. So we work collaborating with the different NGOs and try to see that we are one voice, but also we don't need, the big ones always take the center stage. We also need local NGOs. So we support local NGOs to come up with sustainable projects and programs, and also try to use the language people understand. So we are trying to put together something where we can put most of these documents, actually you have put here, are all in English. But people in my country, few even know English, I'm telling you. So we want to put this in local languages as well, but also emphasize that climate literacy and education should be on the center stage of GEF funding, options, priorities. Anytime you wake up, just know that education is a challenge. You have invested these projects, but there is no way people will be able to take them up because they're also not educated. There's no clear plan. When we raise such issues, we don't even know where these funds go to, because again, there is nothing to account for. How about we first of all, put all our investment, all this money that we are talking about, the funds, the GCF, into education. That should be the first thing we should have done by COP1. Now we are talking about going to COP7 without a clear education strategy in all countries you all come from. We just have to find these things on Google, where again, even internet is really hard to access. So all these issues, can force you to even do anything. You can't just sit and listen to COP leaders, giving you promises, and yet here, there's nothing. So all these things, and I'm telling you, they're really not happening. You might be sitting there, I think you're investing, but you invest and again, they sell the forest. So do you have accountability for it?
Very, very well noted, Derek. And thank you for sharing your views on the power of storytelling, and also how storytelling is important in local languages to actually mobilize youth and societies, and the power and potential and importance of climate education. And speaking on climate education, we actually have Johnny, who is doing work very much on climate education literacy and could actually add to your perspective from Poland with net zero schools and his initiatives in Poland. So Johnny, would you like to add to Derek and tell us about your work and how did you get started and how did you scale up?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me? Very well. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon. We are in different time zones. I'm Johnny Dabrowski from Poland. And my story is short and simple. I joined Fridays for Future Poland 2 years ago. And I joined it from very simple reason, because I saw people on the streets. And from the very first day of my activism, I have been asking myself why they're on the streets. And I must tell you, I found the answer very quickly, because they know what is happening, because they are aware, because in some way they are educated. And so my focus in my activism is climate education from the very beginning of my work. And so I would like to talk about this first, about climate literacy, because this is why I'm here. This is me. And I would like to describe it in a few simple points. That for me, climate literacy is, first of all, the most ignored issue in fighting for climate justice. It is the least funded issue. And on the other hand, it is one of the key issues, if not the most important, because no one would care about it if no one knew. Knowledge is power, and we can't forget about this. when we had no action, no action from the governments, no interest from governments in climate change in the 20th century. I think that was mostly because the awareness about climate change wasn't spread. And here today, there is the opposite. There are people on the streets. There are people uniting for fighting for climate change because they know, because this information is more accessible, because the fossil lobby, I think they're just losing this war because more and more people know about climate change. So I would say that we have a great example, a proof on the streets that climate awareness and climate literacy, it works. It really works. It mobilizes people. You don't have to believe me, just look at the streets in your country. But we cannot forget that, for example, on the COP26, which happened a month ago, I was there, and the biggest delegation there was the fossil fuel delegation. So the fossil fuel lobby is spreading propaganda, and we need to respond to that strongly. And that is why I'm focused on climate education in my work, because as Nelson Mandela said, education is a weapon. And I think that education is a weapon, but for a weapon, you need money to produce it. And by climate education, by climate literacy, I do not mean to learn about plants. Oh no, climate education is far more than that. It's law empowerment. It's the use of law to make change in your region. It's just climate transformation, how to conduct it in your country. It is respect for nature, which our society does not have. And active citizenship, those four main aspects, this is climate education. This is driving the ambition. And I will be honest with you that I am outraged that there is no country with climate education strongly addressed in the curricula. There is no country like this in the whole world. There are NDCs which address climate education, but NDCs, well, they seem to just be simple promises and empty promises. And I'm also outraged that there is no sufficient funding from the United Nations, as well as from the GEF, for climate education in the Global South. But to give a constructive comment, I will give an example. I co-founded climate education team in Fridays for Future Europe last year. And throughout 1 year, we managed to send letters to 15 ministers of education in Europe, where we demanded climate education. We managed to meet with 4 of those ministers. And what is the most important, we managed to meet with, to encourage 2 of them to introduce climate education to the curricula, Minister of Education of Poland and Minister of Education of Lithuania. And ministries of these countries already working on introducing climate education to the curricula, on strongly introducing it. But I will tell you one more thing. We had no money, not a penny, and yet we managed to do this so much. So imagine how much more we could do. We and our friends in the Global South and MAPA, as well as in other countries of the Global North, if we had money, if we had funds. And in conclusion, I would be very pleased to further discuss funding climate literacy driven by youth on our session. And as last point in my introduction, I would like to say that it is hard to get funding in my country, in Poland, in the Global North. And I can imagine how hard it is to get funding even in the surrounding of big environmental groups in the MAPA countries in the global south. So I would love to discuss this problem because it is a problem on this panel. And as the very last point, I would like to say that we are here, we are on this panel, whether watching or speaking, because we know that there is climate disaster. We know that we have to act. But the reason we are here is awareness. It starts with knowledge. Any change starts with knowledge. We cannot forget about it. Thank you for now.
Thank you for that very powerful message, Johnny. And I think we already have recurring themes here. We have the importance of collective voices, storytelling, using law to make a change, as Johnny and Kiefer highlighted, the importance of advocacy, as Derek and Desmond had highlighted. So now we move into more sort of personal stories. And I'd like to know, this is open to the panel. What obstacles did you face while actually starting your impact journey or during your impact journey? Whether that's internally in terms of your fears or feelings, or even externally in terms of society and community responses. So Johnny mentioned about the funding as an external obstacle, but what other obstacles did you feel internally and externally, and sort of how did you overcome them?
I think I should start on this. Some of the obstacles that we find actually also with government, for me, I think even government obstacles are really there, because the challenge you have is most of the funds that come from such kind of support always end up to governments, and they're not really reaching the ground. So it's even hard to monitor, because again, government systems are really very corrupt. I'm telling you, you at times ask them for the counting of these projects. You find most of the money has gone into fuel. You find most of the money has gone into things that you don't really understand how they've really spent on the project. I'm talking about an ecosystem restoration project. And you find that purchasing, things that are really important for the project, that is too low. It's little money that goes to really procurement of the important things of the project. And I think that's why we have to all look at why we are restructuring this, because we have to look at a restructuring model that doesn't really focus on specific institutions. Look at the impact model of the institution. What are they talking about that is really going to bring out the impact? So the obstacle I've found is they talk about they're doing activities, they can't account. Like they can't really show what they're doing, because most of this support goes straight to governments. Most embassies are funding governments. Most funds, GCF, mostly it's government. We need to support more local solutions, because for them, that's where they stay. It's their home. Now, someone's going to drive and reach there and do the project. The other obstacle is there is still little money. There is, like Johnny said, it's really little money. I've told you the first thing would have been construction of schools and everyone knowing about the crises that we're talking about. The next thing should be investing in green jobs and trying to make sure that all these kind of things we're talking about are incentive. Like someone can find an incentive from sustainability, because that's what that creates. From a country I come from, unemployment is really at the very highest peak, 70%. Young people finish going to university, for those who have a chance, but they end up again going on streets. They become beggars. But if we had empowered them for these green jobs, this is a business. Like these are ideas, these are initiatives I saw in the first panel. These things can be scaled up, you get it. But whenever we are not strategically investing in impact, that's the biggest obstacle that we have had over the 30, 50 years, talk about it. We are still doing lip service. There is no really tangible thing. How about, my suggestion should be, how about each organization you give, and they talk about expanding a forest through these hectares, they can really show this. Can they provide? There's a system we use here for mapping trees that we plant. It can really show you where the tree was planted. If its canopy grows, it really shows you where the tree is. They can't even show you where the trees are that they planted, and they're claiming they're planting trees. So we need to first look at accountability of these institutions that we have been supporting for the old years. Before even we come up with a GEF strategy or any other funding strategy, accountability is going to be key, because these corporations have done nothing. I'll tell you, we are not seeing progress. Even the Global Biodiversity Outlook tells you 1 million species. How did we reach there? Well, even now, one of the species just come from a research, and there's even still no hope, because we all closed our eyes when we left with one You get it. So accountability is going to be key, because they're telling you they're conserving in protected areas, but that's where they're doing the forest, the commercial, they're planting trees that are actually destroying the environment itself. But also they're putting there their own personal gardens. It's a government is stealing from people itself. Let's look at accountability of these issues. Otherwise, we shall waste more time bring the solutions. They will even fail at inception. So there's still a big obstacle with that. Implementation, but accountability is key.
Just to add, I definitely agree with you there. Accountability is 100% key, and not only our governments, but also entities and companies that would come to our countries and do what they want, in essence. For a country like Guyana, we have oil and gas. I guess most of you would know. And most times these companies just do things to check off the boxes, but they're not really held accountable, and we're not really seeing the effects of more environmental movements. And in addition to that, there's really a gap, a huge gap, I would say, between the understanding of what we're doing on a higher level with persons that are already in the sector, and with the ordinary man on the ground. The person at the grassroots level would not or does not know what we're doing. They do not know how these things really impact them. And there's a major gap in that understanding. And if we don't find ways or aim to fill that gap, then we're really losing people that these things actually impact. Because yes, we're leaders. Yes, we're the voices for these communities, but at what point do we ask the communities, or we expect the communities to take up their own mantles and to take up their own torches and speak for themselves, in essence? So I think what's necessary, in addition to what you say or said, is for us to ensure that the communities are aware, the communities are acknowledging, and the communities are coming out, and persons on a grassroots level, they're coming out to ensure that their rights are upheld and their voices are heard and their positions are made clear.
I mean, just following up on that, I think the other part of it is also that we need to integrate young people in the process and not the end. What we've observed is that at the end of the day, there are meetings where young people, 1 or 2, are invited, and then they come as a representation, but then they've not been part of the process. So one of the barriers that I've also identified through the activism is that, well, as young people, we have the energy. We know that we need to demand for action. But then when they are now going to make the decision that, okay, let's give this grant, for example, let's give this amount of money to this organization, then the question of, do they have the capacity to deliver? Can they do this? Can they do that? Then we become, our opportunity or the chances of getting it becomes far less, because now they are using this criteria that only shift the resources back to the experience, and the experience are the people who are quite older. So we need to actually, like we are doing in Green Africa Youth Organization, we have what we call the learning project, and we also have the integrated research, where young people from university, which belong to our eco clubs, are paired with professors who have long-standing experience in research and writing papers, just to follow and understand the process. So therefore, when you are looking for a technical person, you can equally get a technical person who understands the topic, but also a young person. Look at what we observed in COP this year. We realized that, for example, the first week, when they wanted to follow the COVID protocols and rooms are not able to take so many people, we end up having maybe just the key negotiator having access to the room. How many countries can you think that a key negotiator would be a young person? It's almost impossible. So yeah, and health protocols, but then at the end of the day, you would not have the representation in the age groups that actually matter. So we need to focus on the process. And of course, the end is important, but the process is where we can actually ensure that youth inclusion makes a lot of impact.
Yes, I would like to also follow up if I can. First of all, to the youth inclusion on COPs, It was my first COP, COP26, and I must admit that yes, we were outraged that we couldn't access most of the sessions. That's why, together with Yango, we pressured the COP presidency that our voice needs to be legally included. That means that, for example, Yango or the youth NGOs in any other form, they need to be a party on the COP. And I'm absolutely confident why I'm saying that, because it's just an absurd and that other people are deciding about our future, and we can only observe the process, which is a theater. But I wanted to say about the obstacle. In my own experience, the obstacle was that even some of my friends, which are climate activists, they didn't see why we need climate education. And the same was with politicians, I think, that they don't think we need it at all. And this is also with some of the environmental groups. So the obstacle is that there is not enough pressure and there is not enough talking about climate education. There is talking about climate, but look at this. In the media, most of the talking is about natural hazards when there is a hurricane and it happens, because, oh, it's so interesting to look at people drowning in water, or it's about politics, like COP26, which I think is getting more popular than Oscars. But my point is that we need climate education in schools as a part of the curricula, and also educating the adults. We need to make this a subject of the people's conversations, of the society conversation. It needs to be on the agenda first of all. So I think this is the obstacle. And that is why I've been pressuring for it so much, because it's still under the carpet. We are taking it, from the carpet, but it's still under there. And so we need just to break the status quo and get it on the agenda, not only the politics agenda, but the media, first of all, because I think it's very important. Like we all see that it's more the people and the media that drive the awareness and this change than the politicians themselves. So I think we are missing this point, that it's still ignored, as I said in the beginning.
Thank you for sharing those very valuable perspectives. And I think it's actually lovely to see how each one of the panelists is actually adding a different dimension to each other. So, having transparency and accountability, creating incentives for sustainability, and actually providing green jobs, actually investing, putting your hands where the mouth is at, or I forgot the phrase, but you know what I mean, and having more monitoring and evaluation to actually create those accountability mechanisms in place. And most of all, having young people in the process, and not just at the end, in terms of youth inclusion, not just as observers and mascots, but actually as engaged participatory citizens throughout the process, and emphasizing consistently on climate education and recognizing that it's actually us as people and the media that actually drives this whole agenda, and having this as a everyday topic to talk about, rather than just having one-off discussions about it just officially, but also integrating it at a very personal level. And I think carrying on from that, since we carried on so the obstacles each of us is facing on the ground realities, as Jeff, carrying on from that, or you can even add more perspectives, what recommendations or, what are your asks or shares? Just think of a Jeff as a close friend, a close mentor, and, you're sharing So what can we do better to help you support in that role as and other organizations as GEF in addressing the obstacles that you're facing at the moment?
I'll still go fast for that. I already had my at least 6-point things I'll need the GEF to really focus on in the strategy or going forward. And one of the recommendations is change the GEF strategy to recognize fully all CSO networks, the same way you recognize giant corporations. Here, I mean, those NGOs that are really big, and you find that the same staff move from one NGO to the next, like they're speaking to themselves. And it's really hard for local NGOs to access this funding. So you don't want to take small grants program. I know there is a much bigger fund than the small grants program. This is just a component of the fund. But let's give them equally. If you're giving all of them the equal amount, just give them the equal amount maybe, but do not give the bigger ones big money because of their budgets. Of course, most of this goes to salary. It doesn't go to actions, but also look at the effectiveness of where this money ends up. That's the accountability I talked about. The other one is there is really no seat for youth on the GEF. There is no seat on the table. It's really hard. This is a consultation, but the earlier conversations were just about, how are your innovations? Such questions come last, So there is really we need to have a really good conversation. We can have a work plan together on how strategically to engage young people or even to support them. And we can consult the broader young people, how much they would need, what kind of initiatives that GEF needs to support directly. What do you think the GEF should support? Because at times you've given money, I don't know if it's, thematic areas, but at times it's hard to track which projects areas do we need to work closely on. But at the same time, also make these requirements a bit easier for young people because they do not have all that experience that you ask them sometimes when you're giving us funding. You find that you ask 10 years experience, some of them, like Desmond was saying, they're just attached to professors to learn something through research. So make it easier for these young people, but also I've told you, strategically engage them and indigenous young people as well, because they have much of the voice. So before even you issue any, has this organization, that do they have proof that this is what people on the ground want, not what them they think these people want. Let's use the people up approach, not the up bottom approach. Let's start from the grassroots. The other one, increase this amount in the small grants program. I know it's really not, I know it's hard to even mobilize this funding, but try as hard as possible. Let's talk with the same voice and ask whoever is supporting, maybe are the governments that have been supporting the fund, or, let's try to push all this voice to see that we can raise this amount of money to reach even others. The other thing is, I would think the first thing we have all agreed is climate literacy should be really mandated. Do these countries you're giving money have a plan on how they're educating people? Awareness is different from, formal education. Most of you all went to school and you have masters, PhDs, degrees. How did you reach there? The kind of knowledge you have is different from someone, my friend, my other youth, who has never been in school. I will discuss climate. They will not even know. They will just see maybe it's too hot. They'll think it's just normal. Maybe God is punishing us. But maybe it's something that's happening that they've never studied about. Let's look at the curriculums that we have. Are they speaking what is really happening? Nothing. I still go to history class and I find that they're teaching us things for ages 17. Why is not that? It's not helping at all. Let's have this curriculum speaking to the cause. Is it going to empower young people with green jobs? Are we increasing our financing when young people projects are invested in? Are they going to scale up to engage other young people? For example, if a project has 10 youth starting up, are we going to have 30 the next time? Are we going to have 40 projects? Those are 100. When you're reporting next time on the video, I need to see like thousands of these initiatives, but building from an initiative that you had supporting others. Then the other one is gender. No one has mentioned gender yet. Gender issues are really key. Participation of women is still hard, I'm telling you. It's really hard. For me, when I come from, even when you call for meetings, they're still shy to come up because no one has really come up for them to support them strategically. No, do these projects have gender components embedded into them? How many women are participating in implementation of these projects? When they go, they meet village chiefs who are big people, men, the ones who are going to decide the future of where the women. You get it? They are not being supported. They're not. It's hard, and it's through education that we can start by empowering women. But I'll be happy with all, even the GEF board and everyone. Most of these are women. I'll be really happy because they have a different view. These are mothers of the planet. They really can't produce kids to suffer through all these details, flooding, your child dies because of no food, really? And what leaders are watching? It's not going to happen. Then the last one, and I'll emphasize it, is accountability. Start asking from the money you have given all those corporations, the big NGOs and stuff, how much progress has it added from the last time you gave them, before you even give them a new grant? Let's see progress. Let us support progress. That's how we shall all reach there. Let us support progress. Let's just not support because they are big, they are friends, or you have a former staff, there. Let us support progress. This is how youth initiatives have not been supported, because we are not even taken serious in terms of things we do. Even if we do them, someone said, oh, I was there, maybe just looking for a way to survive. This is not what we need this fund to do. Let's have a plan on tracking progress and invest in progress. Not with big corporations, treat all of them equally, invest on impact, not on them. 50 years we're here again discussing climate crisis. It's crazy. I beg to submit.
I would like to support Derek, if I can. So first of all, I would like to say that I agree with all what Derek said, and we cannot change the world with the same approach that it's being destroyed. This is what I mean. And that's why I agree with Eric, with Derek, that the CSO and the youth, we need to have a seat at the table. As well, for example, as we need to have a seat at COP26. That's the comparison. We cannot follow the principles that already exist, because we need to create new principles and new approaches. This is the change. My team has made an estimate, for example, that it would be very sufficient to have about $200 million for the small grants program, as Derek said, and about $50 million for the CSO operations. And I would like to emphasize what Derek said, that the money has to go directly to the youth. I think this is the obstacle. It cannot go for brokers, for politicians, for the other groups. It needs to go directly to the youth groups. I'm not from the Global South, I'm from the Global North, but for the other programs beside climate education, we got grants directly. For example, we got our travel for COP26 founded by a Polish foundation, and we use this money because we lobbied for politicians who made a great job there. So I can guarantee, and I think I can do this on behalf of all young people who are here, that if you give money directly to us, we will make progress. That is for certain. We have a completely different approach than the generations before us have. And so I think that this is also a key issue, that you can empower us also through the information, as I said, the law and empowerment and active citizenship empowerment, but we will never achieve our goals, even if we get educated, without money, because this is how the world goes by. And this is what we may change in 100 years, but not now. So we need to have funds directly, and well, we will waste them well, saying with a bit of a smile. I would like to pass to the other speakers. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you guys wholeheartedly. That is really and truly a problem. Being able to access funding, especially at a grassroots level, it's I would dare say impossible. It's unnecessarily hard, and it creates a barrier for persons or young people, grassroots entities that have a vision but lack what might be categorized as a structure, so to say. And the GEF process kind of downtrots young people. And what is necessary is probably to rethink how funds are being allocated, especially for small grant funds, how they're being allocated, and if something like a guarantor system could be implemented, where maybe an accredited entity could kind of vouch for a smaller organization or a grassroots entity so that the funds could be dispensed to them without necessarily they having to follow suit strictly to the specific criteria that's required from the GEF system. I think that's where we really need to revise and relook at, because yes, the funding is available. And like my colleague said, how can we really access funding more than just what is really a fraction of what a proper implementation of a project would cost? So I think that is necessary for us to really relook, or GEF rather, to really relook at that. And of course, with the guidance, hopefully, and inclusion of young people, with the vision of how you guys can really do that, because it's really just the same people at the table discussing the same things, but maybe you need an insertion of new ideas and new perspectives to rethink how you can do that.
Yeah, just re-emphasizing what everyone has said. I think as a young person, entrepreneur, and also an activist in that matter, I have not put in an application for funding from GEF. And it's not that I'm not aware, and application to apply is also not there because I just don't believe that it's even going to work. You know, and usually institutional visibility is connected to the visibility of the thematic areas you work on. And I'm not really sure how many young people are there, the secretariat or at the board, and even if they are there, what role they play. Is it taken as equal, potentially equal, capable stakeholder role, or they are just there to balance the count, you know? And it's the same way that we are talking about the capacity, the awareness level. I think we can talk about awareness, but then let's build capacity of young people and build capacity of the people that we work with to really understand what sort of awareness are we trying to create. Because, for example, on the climate, a lot of people are talking about different stuff. What is the tool that you are really using to make sure that the message going out there is clear, is concise, and it is direct? You know, and then the other thing with the funding, I worked with the Global Alliance on Incinerator Alternative, and I realized that one thing that funders had a problem with young people, especially, was that they have their template of reporting, they have their template of, they've templated everything. And then according to these templates, they are so technical that some of these young people would find it difficult to follow. And so therefore, these big funders don't feel comfortable actually working directly with some of the small organizations because take to follow the project progress. So what we started doing was to actually appreciate coalitions that sub-grant, you know. So with working with these coalitions, you sort of subcontracted or you've outsourced some of these efforts, and then you're just monitoring these people. So you are still in direct contact with the smaller organization that you funded directly, but then there's somebody who is in between, and that is the coalition, the head of the coalition, who is making sure that they do due diligence, they do the other work that you would have done, which you couldn't be doing with such a smaller organization. At the end of the day, you are still getting, you are able to measure impact, you are able to follow indicators, and you can actually see value for your money. And I would tell you that young people, they are hungry for success. So before young people would misappropriate money, they would have to have had so many of the opportunities to take it for granted, because for now, we are focused, we are dreaming big. And so therefore, every little peso counts. So try to focus on a lot of young people, I would say.
Thank you for that. We had many key takeaways. And I think a very, very enriching and insightful discussion in this very short time with these very, very, very key takeaways, which I would possibly organize in sort of 5 key buckets on the journey of impact making. So at the start, from an institutional level, actually having accountability, transparency, with monitoring and evaluation mechanisms, and through climate law for organizations, for private organizations and companies. Next, actually communicating that to citizens in a very layman language that is relatable, impactful, and understandable, and using the power of storytelling and having collective voices, avenues for collective voices in order to actually do so. And then that would create, and actually then have in the actual implementation process, in the strategic decision process, once we have, having that simultaneously integrate youth in all parts of the process. As the panelists just said, in different ways, through different, speaking of their own experiences, having them not just at the end, having it throughout the process as engaged decision makers, not only to balance the count, but throughout the investor and stakeholder process. And another thing is to integrate cross-cutting solutions. So, integrating gender with climate, as Derek also mentioned, in the implementation of the project. And as all panelists mentioned, to actually put your money where your mouth is. Now I got the phrase right. But actually the money has to go directly to youth groups, directly to organizations that need the money, and actually exploring possible options and mechanisms to provide funding to, as Kiefer said, actually giving the vision a structure. It's the money at the end that gives the vision a structure. And, are we actually trusting youth in what they're doing if we're not really giving them the money directly? And that's the big question. We're involving them in the process at the end, but are we involving them in the whole journey as decision makers, and not just as the representatives, and actually having enough trust in them to actually give them the money and address the gap and access to funding that they are all facing as one of the biggest obstacles? And what can we do? How can we facilitate funders who are actually giving the money, and facilitate youth who are receiving the money, to actually have, make it easier for them in terms of procedures, as Desmond mentioned, and have more sub-grants or coalitions of sub-grants, and enable them to follow indicators and instructions better. So on that note, I would like to thank all the panelists, and perhaps in one word, because, in one sentence, quickly we'll go around the table, and, there are a lot of young people here. What advice in one sentence would you give to a young person starting out their climate impact journey? Real quick brainstorm around the table.
I would say learn from others, because that's very important. When I started, I did not know how to maneuver my way, and I always had to learn from others. And I think that really helped.
Noted.
I would say be persistent, because especially when you're not receiving funding and you're so passionate about a project, and you're trying to get funding but you're not, you could get a little downtrodden by that. So I would say be persistent and
to learn from others, be persistent. Derek and Johnny?
Yeah, mine is really crucial. Build your capacity, because these, the people who are also planning to give you their money, trust that they're giving it someone who has built their capacity around these issues. So let's continue learning, because education is key. And also, do not give up. Don't work alone. Work with others. Seek knowledge. Try not to shy away. Some youth actually intimidated and they scare away. They will run away. They won't say what they want to say. But for us, we are not scared, and we want to tell you, please don't be scared as well. Always put your instincts right. You're always right. The month that you started, someone mentioned starting. Actually, I didn't tell you how I really started. I just told you what made me to start. But how I really started, I've struggled, I've failed. So don't fail to try. And the sky is the limit. There's always room for growth. So the moment you fall, please find ways of coming back. And we are the majority. So let's enjoy ourselves as well, but make the planet what we want it to be.
Enjoy yourself, don't fail, and keep trying. Johnny?
Yeah, I think that climate activism is very in fashion now. And I noticed that a lot of people join it and not necessarily they want to do it. So I would say that if you know why you want to do it, then do it. Because if you don't, give yourself time. Because I think that in life you should do what you love and love what you do, and that should apply to anything, even climate activism. And I think that in conclusion, the more activists we have and the more engaged activists we have, the more knowledge we spread.
Thank you for that, Johnny.
Isha, lastly, I want to thank you for moderating this panel, because at times, facilitators are not thanked. On behalf of all the panelists, I want to thank you for moderating this session.
My pleasure. I learned so much in this session today. I feel like I did a whole 6-month course on environment and youth activism in just 1 hour. So it was very enriching, and thank you for the perspectives. And I think the audience and everyone here enjoyed it as much as I did. So thank you so much. I don't know if we have any time for questions. Do we have time for questions, Gabriella, or we can move straight to the next session?
Let me see. I think we could take one question. And before we go into the question, I also will have to thank you, Isha, for a great facilitation of this fabulous panel. It's one of those awe moments. I don't know if you could translate that to other languages, when you're looking at something that we're hearing something that, yes, I felt like that. And I actually will be one of those people that are probably going to go back to the video and listen to you one more time, because I had to focus on other things. So I will do that, because it was very good. And it was exactly the kind of conversation, the timely conversation that the GEF needs at this time when we are thinking about this. So I'm really, truly thankful. But let me not speak. Let me think if there was one question, maybe. Susan, did you see one question that we want to take?
There was on the chat.
Yeah, Susan was going to monitor the chat.
Yes, Gabriela. Basically, no, the chat was very, very active. There was a lot of information being exchanged back and forth. There was one question that did come up, which was that, I don't know who this goes to, but it was one question that came up a number of times, which was, how can we best engage the youth in the climate discussions in the future before COP27 in Egypt? That was one question. And then just now, again, there was one question which is being asked to the GEF CEO and council members. How are they considering these funding issues for GEF CSO network and youth groups?
I think the strategy for youth, like someone said, should be like, it's even hard to get on the delegation. Actually, I think Johnny is your first COP. I've always tried to go to COP. This was my 6th attempt to really go to COP, and I really finally went there. And I went there for someone who thought I really need to be there. It wasn't even my government. So again, there has to be support. At least every government delegation should have young people on it. It's always hard. Here, all budgets got done even the time they were even announced. Like no youth, all the youth that went had to find their own NGOs. So I want to thank NGOs that always support youth, but we need governments to step up this, because they are the parties that go to COP. And again, they should not lock us out. We have a youth group that always connects youth, but again, even the youth who are not part of that group. So how do we get all this in the same room and have the same plan? The other thing is we need to have a clear plan that all of us as young people have added our voices. It's going to be validating plans about our future that we don't know about. So that's a clear plan. We should be part of that. We should be part of the drafting, the reviewing, the dissemination. That should all be us. It's how we engage young people, because they have the energy, like someone said. But again, they have the passion for these things, and this is their future. So you should also stop deciding our future without us. Nothing without us, nothing about us without us. Never again. It's the time that we are recognized. We are not going to be activists anymore. People will do this work on a day-to-day. It's also our career to make this planet a very beautiful planet. So we don't want us to be taken as, how can we get you guys here? But you're also where we are. You were once here. And if you didn't work on your future, it's time for us. We're working on our future. And you want one where people and nature are thriving, where we're all living in harmony with nature. I always joke around, I want to have a street where I can have an elephant seated somewhere and it's having fun. I want to have a street where I'm locking it down in the zoo for me to go and smile at it, yet it's suffering. So let's treat young people like stakeholders. We are not a threat. We are part of the development process. Consult us. We actually have the expertise. Consult. If you don't know, consult us.
Thanks, Derek, for that conversation. I see youth as a threat to the business as usual, and that's the whole point. And that is why we need them. So let me react to what you said, Derek. The GEF is not, again, is here to support countries, not necessarily governments. And this means that we need to think a little bit out of the box of what we have done traditionally. Unfortunately, not all countries have the same political culture when they plan for the COPs. In some countries, because I've been a climate and CBD negotiator for Costa Rica for 25 plus years, some countries fully engage with civil society and private sector, and some other countries are very jealous on how they work and approach the different conventions. The GEF can be a facilitator of local domestic political processes by doing workshops, by doing different initiatives, whereby we can help all different stakeholders to engage through a bottom-up process in the preparation for the many different COPs. And yes, of course, there are many countries where what they need is financial support to engage other non-state actors. In other cases, it's much, much different. And we need to really understand the political, cultural related challenges. Nevertheless, the GEF will be happy to explore possibilities to do that as we invest a lot of resources in capacity building and training. My point is we already do capacity building and training, probably on a very classical approach. As we see more and more an openness from multilateralism towards non-state actors, this can be the great opportunity or the opening of the door for us to really work in that direction. In terms of a CSO network, GEF will be doing our utmost effort in GEF-8 to financially support the core operation of the CSO network. This is something that we have indicated from a year ago. We're getting into the final stretches of the GEF replenishment, and we will reflect this commitment to our donors. So we will be doing that and a little bit more than just providing basic core funding for the CSO network operation. We got additional ideas. Particularly, I was super impressed by the project that Maria Lechner and Uruguay just finished, where the civil society was fully engaged at the subnational level. That medium-sized project that we did in Uruguay is a very interesting way by which we can address many issues. Maria, you know, what you did in Uruguay, and based on what Derek and others has been saying here, can be a good way by which we can, you know, look at youth as a way to achieve those goals in terms of more engagement in civil society and higher participation in the international negotiations. What do you think, Maria?
Thank you, Carlos Manuel, to put that on the table. Really, I'm so glad to share with everyone here, all the CSOs, because that medium-sized project was just thinking and created 10 years ago and implemented for 5 years. And it was from the civil society, it was a medium-sized from civil society to articulate the conventions, of the 3 major conventions, and we invite the government to work with us. It was a different approach, very innovative per se, because we want to make the work together is possible. And I remember just everyone to say to me, no, this is not possible, Maria, you are a dreamer, you're just doing something that is not. But you know, I'm now after 5 years, I really feel that it's just possible to work together, to have the same dialogue, the same agenda. We discuss each week. with a team of people that is doing, from the Minister of the Environment that you saw, Carlos Manuel, at the meeting 15 days ago. We've been together in a meeting at the COP, and at the same time with the people working there in a small town in the middle of nowhere in Uruguay, just working with the local, very local level people in our country. And this is a platform to work together, and it's possible, and everyone from different sectors says how successful and how good is work together. And it's a logic of the GEF 8. I think this is a logical of this is possible, because integrate a government that is the representative of the convention, then you have the minister, and then you have the people, the real people working there, and supported and very, very well managed in the way that we are together. That's the thing. Thank you to put it on the visual thing today. Thank you very much. I'm impressed. I am emotional about it. Oh.
Yes, Maria, thank you. And thank you all. I know we are running out of time, so let's push forward. I know that there are many waiting to reflect and to get back to you on their reflections of the conversations that we've had today. I was going to introduce Malintle Kelele from the CSO network to moderate the next session, which we will hear from our from Salim Ali and from Tom Bowie, our Canadian council member, and from Francois Klotz, that will then conclude the meeting. So are you there, Malintle? Yes?
Yes, I am.
Yes, you are. Well, I hand over to your able hands then, and you take it to the end. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Is anyone hearing Malintle?
We have a connection problem, I think.
Oh, okay. Well, in order to save some time, and I'm very sorry, Malintle, so maybe you can come in the end. In order to save some time, I know that people have to leave around 11 at least. So let me then introduce Salim Ali from the GEF staff, our scientific and technical advisory panel, and to reflect a little bit of what he has heard and how that is connected with the work and efforts of the GEF staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabriela, and friends around the world. As a member of the science panel, the Scientific and Technical Advisory Panel for the GEF, we review all of the major GEF proposals which are submitted by countries. And it's wonderful to see increasingly proposals are getting more components which deal with youth. And this is an area of great interest to me personally, as someone who is in my day job an educator and works with youth, and also as a parent of two boys who are 20 and 23 and are just within that sort of youth ambit. So I'm really very pleased to hear the conversations, but I did want to provide some points of caution and some points of advice for our wonderful youth leaders who joined us. So first of all, one point I would say is that activism is very seductive. And I know Derek alluded to that. You know, Derek said it, and Johnny also said that. Johnny said that climate activism has become fashionable. And what is very important is that you mix that activism with sound science. Get involved in the business of science. Understand the science that is behind environmental problems and do it with rigor, not superficially. That requires effort. When you're managing your time, keep time for activism, but keep time for learning. keep time for reading so that you are actually understanding in depth. Remember that famous aphorism from Alexander Pope, that a little learning is a dangerous thing. And that is increasingly a challenge for many of our youth. Secondly, what I would say is approach these issues with a systems science perspective, not just with a reductionist perspective where you look at one issue. And that is what GEF is trying to do. If you look at our integrated programs, we are trying to make connections between different fields, whether it's sustainable cities, or it's looking at issues of the blue economy and so on in the future. So keep that system science perspective. Climate change is important, biodiversity is important, and so on, but the connections are very important. Thirdly, I was so pleased and heartened to hear the indigenous voices. I have worked with indigenous people all over the world. In fact, my PhD dissertation 20 years ago was on indigenous people's conflicts with mining companies all over the world. And so I am particularly interested in the indigenous perspective, as we should all be. However, there needs to be a convergence between traditional ecological knowledge, which comes from indigenous traditions, as well as with modern science. Both can learn from each other. Both should not look down on each other. So that convergence between modern science and traditional ecological knowledge is what can deliver the best outcomes for sustainability. So those are just few words, and I look forward to gaining far more insights from all of you, and kudos to the youth for their dynamism and energy, and we are with you. We are all on the same team. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and also for keeping it short. So we are keeping within our time. Thank you so much for those words of wisdom. And now I have another words of wisdom probably coming from our council member from Canada. Tom Bowie, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yes, you are, and you have no hat on anymore.
Yes, I wanted to, be as rebellious as Carlos Manuel.
Oh, okay.
But unlike him, probably he didn't go to jail for it, but I did for other issues. Anyways, I'm not going to share with you wisdom because, frankly, I'm still too young at 50. Carlos Manuel at 61 is probably much more wiser than I am. And you all are very wise because I heard from your heart, from your conviction, your stories, your call to action, and your ideas. And I could easily give you motherhood statements like, I'm impressed, and all of those things. But frankly, I will tell you that, I was listening with my heart and not my mind. I was thinking about the indigenous families, the call for a redefinition of happiness from our dear colleague from Mexico, of being able to speak your own tongue, being one with your history, and finding again that human heart. And when I hear about people bleeding, their heart bleeding for those who don't have enough to eat, and then doing nurseries in order to have organic fruits, those are the real stories that touch the human heart and mobilize us. And so with that, I'm going to share with you what I heard, because the most important thing about having a council member here is not my wisdom, it's what I heard from you, so that I can actually take it to the meetings next week and also to the replenishment meetings that will be in early 2022. So Elizabeth told us to not look at youth as an afterthought, but as partners, as partners, collaborators for the real change that we need. That the world should invest in young people to bring solutions to life. And all of us, not only youth, but me, Carlos Manuel, every single time we take a decision, is it intergenerational? Is it fair for today's people and tomorrow's generation? just like my kid who's 14 and 12. And actually, that's why I'm doing this job, is for my kids and their kids who are not even born yet. I heard from Alba about the importance of looking at indigenous women and youth, and our staff colleagues actually recognize the importance of mixing. I don't like to call it modern science with traditional knowledge, because that sounds like a value judgment. It's all sources of human knowledge is important in order for us to restore harmony with nature. Barsha talked about non-academic youth. That I heard loud and clear, because it fights against one thing that we always fall into, which is elitism. Once you are educated, you belong to another club, but then what happens to the rest? And if we are not careful, we will always fall into the same traps again. And so if we want diversity and inclusion, we have to make sure that we're careful about the labels that we use. Because people who don't go to school have other knowledge, have other capital to contribute. Then I really love, what Chibeze did. Stop the coal. Instead of powering past coal, why don't you just stop it? Stop bad behavior before you start. And that Canada and the UK is part of the Powering Past Coal Alliance. But I'm just, I'm going to tell Minister Guilbeault of Environment and Climate Change Canada that, thanks to a youth, they didn't even start on the coal journey. Then Maribel talked about culture, life in harmony with nature. That's what I took. And that, Arashid is about starting a pilot and sharing and being open so that others can have green jobs and to ensure food security. Then Kiefer, I love Kiefer's story about the Caribbean, because I used to represent the Caribbean at the World Bank Group when I was just a wee 29-year-old. And I didn't know anything, but I listened. And by listening, you sort of like gain a little bit of knowledge in order to share, but you always have to check back. Then Desmond talked about indigenous trees, but the one that really struck me was Derek and Johnny. Let's save ourselves and stop making excuses. I like that, because I can give you all of the, I call it the policy spiel or the speeches of how great and so on and so forth, but that doesn't make any difference. So let's figure out a way to actually do things rather than talk. And as a joke to all of my colleagues, they know I'm educated and everything else, but sometimes I play with English by saying that I don't speak nice, or I don't speak good, so that, to tell them that let's forget about all of the artificial stuff, let's get real. And Johnny is absolutely correct that, education is very, very important, that we have to understand law, just transition, which is about people, respect for nature. No country has a climate education and curriculum. The stuff that will agree with you, everybody will agree with you. Now, the question, of course, is that how do we make it happen? And I'm glad that you're making accessible to a lot of countries in Europe. And now we just have to figure out a way to take the insights, the stories, the passion that you have into the GEF Council next week. And I'm sure that Francois will do so, or Carlos Manuel. I'll be there. And then take it to also the replenishment meetings. But that's what I heard. If I missed anything, and if you want to share additional stories with me, because I will tell you one thing, it's not about appealing to the head. It is appealing to the heart that actually gets you the decisions from decision makers, like ministers and so on and so forth. I hope that was a helpful contribution, Elsa.
It was very much so, Tom, and I think and this made me think that one of the things when we started this this journey this morning, one of the things that I put forward was this, that we have to listen. And I really do like your ending, that you have to listen, not with your head, but with your heart. And thank you for that. So now we're coming very much to the end of a fabulous morning or an evening for some. And I will just hand over to Françoise Plot. She's the director at the GEF on policy and operations, and she will do closing and maybe a little bit of the next steps, but also it's going to be interesting to hear what you heard, Françoise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabriela, and thanks to everybody for an incredible morning. It's never, a good thing to speak after Tom Buey, but it's not a good thing to speak after all of you either. So, we have heard such a diversity of strong voices today, and such caring, commitment, courage, and value-loaded intent, right? That it is actually very difficult to follow that act, right? I will not try to summarize because Tom just did it, and I very much agree with what he said in terms of what he heard. But I think it's worth noting that there was energy here of an intensity that we rarely heard here. There was caring, there was commitment, there was mindfulness about others who are more vulnerable. There are mindfulness about the ones who are not yet in this world with us, in the commitment that you have to make change. And we're extremely touched by this because it is also the values, the commitment, the intent that the GEF as an institution has inherited from its mandate and is trying to live as its values. So this is a very important moment for us, and one that we very much hope can convert, not just in an occasional discussion as we had today, and it's very much a first, right? But can convert into a more frequent interaction so that we derive from each other energy and innovation and ideas, right? I noticed that you do not just have dissatisfaction with the current order, which we can perfectly understand that you would have, but you are asking fundamental business questions, right? And issues about increasing accountabilities, issues about tracking progress and results, issues about really making it real that the voices of and the knowledge of indigenous people, of women, of youth are integrated, not as a sounding board, as a participant, as an actor of design, as an actor of building solutions, and as an actor of project execution as well. So we're making very good note of all of that, right? I don't think I can answer the many calls for action here or really give satisfaction to some of the vibrant challenges that you brought to us. But I can share that in GEF 8, as we are working with donors to try to raise funds for a new round of action here, we are certainly bringing, under the leadership of Carlos Manuel, who hasn't spared us with internal ambition and external ambition here, we are going for much more substantive footprint. We are hoping to leverage action and leverage resources and leverage policies and knowledge as well, because those are key ingredients of getting out on a bigger scale with results, right? So leveraging is key to it. Integrated action, as Salim said, is key to it. Innovation is key to it. And the ambition ultimately is system impact. It's not just project implementation in a sort of ring-fenced way, right? It's really impacting the system as a whole. So as we enter into GEF 8, and as we're discussing with donors, some of them with us today, in fact, we are aiming at greater ambition. We are aiming at engaging CSOs and CBOs more and more directly, meaning with more resources and with more direct involvement. And that's part of the plan that we're currently presenting, particularly with the ambition of increasing the size of the small grant program, but also providing alternative access to the resources that engage that engage CSOs into action. And we are very keen to see in the midst of that, that the voice of youth and the action of youth be unleashed even further into the instruments that we have that allow direct financing. Yoko shared that it's already a large share of what we do in the SGP, but more can be done, and there's certainly a business case for that after listening to all of you. So I really appreciated the words of the end, and I think they are very inspirational in their shortness, right? To be persistent, to learn from others, to focus on education and capacitation, to not be shy and not be afraid to try, not be afraid to fail, right? And to enjoy ourselves, actually, which I think we have done this morning. On top of all the rest of it, it's been an incredible joy, actually, to listen to you. So I am left now to thank you all the panelists who spoke up and then gave us abundant challenges, starting with Elizabeth and many of you after that, to all the facilitators who came in to make sure we hear those voices in balance and we keep to the time, which we did very nicely, and special thanks to Isha. To all the participants that have stayed with us for the whole time. I mean, hardly any attrition this morning. In fact, for a long while, the numbers were increasing. And so I think it's incredible that we had that long session with such animation and interest. Thanks to our partners as well, to staff, to council members, to colleagues, and thanks also to the team here that has worked very, very hard, led by Paula, but thanks to Gabriela, who's our facilitator in chief today and has conceived of this session, with to Susan, Michael, Ted, Regine, and many others who have made this a possible session this morning. So thanks again for the gift of voice and straight thinking that you gave us today. And we're looking forward very much to ways of doing more of this and to take this into what the GEF allows in finances, which is direct action for our goal of improving on global environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Muchas gracias a todos. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And very special thanks to panel members who up to now continued nearly 100 people are participating. So thank you everyone on behalf of the GEF CSO network. We appreciate your supports, Carlos Manuel and GEF Secretariat colleagues. Thank you so much. And good night from Cambodia.
Good night.
Thank you very much, all.
Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Muchas gracias. Un abrazo.
Thank you.
Bye, Laura. Gracias.
Okay, bye.